This world is home to some truly strange and very dangerous things, and luckily, adventurers use their shields to protect everyone. With his shield in hand, our hero bravely defends himself from a freaky-looking monster's attack, and the creature seems surprised that its blow was stopped so easily. But the warrior holds his ground, gripping the shield with all his might. In that instant, one of his companions shouts for him to get ready for an attack, and with that, the group's mages team up to cast a powerful spell. With a single command, they unleash a blast of fire at the enemy, and as the dust settles, only the monster's hand is left on the ground. The team's archer then lets out a sigh of relief and asks if everyone is okay. His partners celebrate being safe and having leveled up, and the blonde guy thanks Marin, saying it's great to have a tank on the team. Suddenly, though, the whole group's expression changes to shock, and they tell the knight to stop. Marin simply ignores them as he readies his knife to do that thing again, and then he pulls out a razor-sharp blade to begin his work. The first thing he does is remove all the hair from the orc's limbs, and right after, he seasons and cooks the meat to get rid of the nasty smell. Once the cut is ready, he slices it into several small pieces. Watching this, the archer complains that he'll never get used to such a gross sight. The girl questions why he eats it, but the mage says he tries to make it taste good. And to finish the dish, he adds a small garnish for a special touch. With a divine glow, the orc meat pasta is finally complete, but his companion still finds it revolting, no matter how pretty the dish looks. Paying no attention to her opinion, the protagonist peacefully eats his meal. Seeing him, his friend asks if monster food is actually tasty, and he then offers some to the girl, who immediately recoils with a look of disgust. The knight thinks it's delicious and that the people here don't know what they're missing. As he savors the taste of the juicy meat and the smooth texture of the creamy pasta, his friends find it bizarre that he eats monsters with such a happy expression and call him a weirdo. At this, the archer changes the subject, asking if they heard the news about the missing hero. The young woman is startled and asks where they found him, and he replies it was in the Tursan forest. The mage is shocked, since he passed through there the other day, and says he was a promising hero. Hearing the conversation, our hero stops eating, lost in his thoughts, and wonders how strong the monster that lives in that dangerous forest must be. His friend comments that Marin is probably just thinking about how he can eat that monster, too, and then calls out to him, asking why he started eating monsters. The knight stares at them in silence, as if remembering something important. The story then flashes back 3 months in time to a small village in the south, where people were gathered, discussing the stopped wagons after a red boar appeared on the road. One of the villagers points to a wrecked cart, saying it's impossible to travel like this. A man arrives in town with his cart all busted up, showing just how dangerous the road has become. And because of this, no one can leave the village, and the residents are at a loss. An old man laments that he won't be able to see his son due to the monster blocking the path. Meanwhile, 2 merchants worry because the delivery deadline for a noble is approaching, and one of them is getting desperate because if the delivery is late, they'll be in big trouble. Just then, a man shouts from on top of his wagon that they won't be going anywhere for a while, and tells the protagonist he doesn't care, ordering the knight to find another ride. Seeing this, one of the merchants draws his friend's attention to the helmeted warrior, and notes that the guy looks a bit ragged but incredibly strong at the same time. The other man then has a brilliant idea and decides to hire the knight as an escort. He says they'll gather as many travelers as possible and asks the hero to wait a moment. The merchant named Moham introduces himself and then asks for our protagonist's name. Lying calmly on the cart, the young man introduces himself as Marin Glace. The other man thinks there's something strange about him, suspecting he might be a deserter, but Moham doesn't care as long as he can handle the monsters on the road. The protagonist remains silent, listening to the conversation without caring what they think. The scene then cuts to a dark forest, showing a pair of eyes filled with despair. Someone wonders why this happened while staring at a severed arm on the ground, and then discovers the body of the hero, who was brutally struck down in the forest. Horrified by the scene, the young man looks back with a face of pure panic, and trembles in fear at the terrible sight of the fallen hero in the dark woods. Suddenly, he hears a strange noise and sees a giant creature approaching from the shadows. With eyes wide with terror, he realizes there's nowhere to run, but he gathers his determination, resolved to get out of that forest alive. As he thinks about reaching the Dharma, a shadowy figure with red eyes watches him. Back in the present, Moham wakes Marin up and apologizes for not noticing he was asleep. The protagonist says it's fine, and the merchant explains they were just chatting. They discuss their destinations, and Moham asks the knight where he's heading in a Dharma, and he replies that he's going to see his family at the St. Raya's orphanage after a long time away. Another muscular passenger asks for the protagonist's level, noting he seems powerful. The man explains that the level seen through the mind's window indicates someone's strength, and with great pride he shows off his own level of 23, encouraging Marin to check his. The knight then opens his status screen, revealing his level is 95. Seeing the absurdly high number, the 2 men fall back in complete shock. Suddenly, the cart comes to a screeching halt and the driver yells that the monster's here. Something gigantic charges toward them, kicking up dust and destroying everything in its path. Then, the dreaded red boar appears before them, radiating a terrifying fury, and the creature bears its sharp tusks and its multiple eyes filled with hatred. The strong man shouts for everyone to prepare for battle and draw the monster's attention, but it's too late, as the protagonist is already face to face with the red boar. Marin finds the beast strange but concludes that in the end, it's just a red boar, and then uses his appraisal skill, seeing that the creature is at level 62. With this information, our hero decides this opponent is perfect for a little test. The knight draws his sword and calmly walks toward the beast. The strong man in the group is startled to see him advance alone against the monster, and desperately shouts, asking if the guy has gone crazy and wants to be taken down. But Marin ignores the warning, standing face to face with the charging red boar. The creature roars, ready to attack, but the protagonist just waits for the right moment, and in one swift motion, the knight swings his sword in a powerful upward arc. The red boar is instantly split in two, its remains flying everywhere. The protagonist lands gracefully as the two halves of the monster fall behind him, and he seems a little confused and even surprised by the result of his own devastating attack. Witnessing the unbelievable scene, all the other travelers scream in astonishment. Even Marin is speechless, wondering if it was really him who did that. He never imagined a single strike could cause so much damage, despite the level difference. The muscular man grabs him, shouting about how incredible it was that he sliced the beast in half, and then asks if Marin is an elf or a beastman, because he doesn't seem human. All the other passengers just stare at the knight in stunned silence. The big guy slaps him on the back, saying that after a show of power like that, he needs to eat, and calls everyone for a meal. But the protagonist just stares at his own hand, deep in thought. Later that night, the group sets up camp and gathers around the fire to eat. Two men discuss Marin, finding it strange that he always hides his face and uses cheap gear, and one of them jokes that his old sword might be a legendary treasure and tells him to go ask. The girl then calls for Marin but realizes he's no longer in his spot, and she and another companion are confused because the knight was there just a second ago. Suddenly, they both look to the side and are completely shocked by what they see. Marin was dragging the giant carcass of the red boar toward the camp. The young woman screams at him, demanding to know why he brought it, and he replies that he wanted some meat. Furious, she orders the knight to take the disgusting creature back where he found it. A while later, everyone is eating a simple soup they prepared over the campfire. A bald man complains that he's lost his appetite and says to never bring monsters to the dinner table. The protagonist feels a bit uncomfortable with their reaction, looking a little downcast, and yet, he brings the spoon to his helmet to taste the soup they made. But upon tasting it, he has a strange reaction, as if he's choking, and another adventurer comments that the soup is delicious, but Marin seems to hate the taste. A blonde woman then chides her, saying it's a good meal for someone on the road. Seeing the knight's reaction, she asks if he really wanted to eat that thing from before, and adds that besides being disgusting, the monster could be poisonous. She explains the rule is to take only what's necessary from a monster and burn the rest immediately. The archer says she's also heading to a dorama, so he should eat even if he doesn't like it. The men shout for help as they're unable to get the beast carcass to burn, and even with a torch, the monster's body simply refuses to catch fire. With that, the archer approaches and tells them to get out of the way, she'll handle it herself. The protagonist is confused, wondering why they called an archer to light a fire, but suddenly the girl summons a ball of fire in her hand using elemental magic. She then launches the spell at the red boar's carcass, which immediately bursts into flames. Seeing this, our hero is quite surprised, not expecting such an ability. A companion comments on how useful magic is, and the woman agrees that it's easy to learn. The girl stares at her hand, admiring the power of her fire magic. Marin then approaches and asks if she's from the magic tower, which confuses her. He explains that most mages come from there, but she retorts angrily that she's an archer. The young woman says that even non-mages can do it, but it takes about 3 years to learn. The knight observes that basic magic is normal for adventurers and asks what era she's from. She grabs him by the shoulder and points to the horizon, showing our hero something. Atop a hill, the woman points to the lights of a city twinkling in the night. The protagonist is stunned by the sight, as he's never seen anything like it before, and realizes they're magic stones used as streetlights, leaving him completely impressed. The girl explains that it's rare in the countryside but quite common in the city, and adds that nowadays, even children's toys are powered by magic. Marin observes the city from afar, thinking about how much time has passed, as it wasn't like this in his day. Near the fire, one of the men smells the roasting meat and wishes it were pork, and his friend jokes that it would be perfect with a cold beer after a hard hard day's work. Meanwhile, the protagonist silently watches the monster's carcass burn in the fire. The next day, they finally arrive in a dorama and thank Marin for his invaluable help. The merchant shakes the knight's hand, expressing his deep gratitude for the protection. But our hero simply thanks them for everything with a quiet, somber expression. Watching the knight leave, the merchants wonder if he really didn't eat anything on the trip. One of them remembers the young man threw up everything he ate and ended up drinking only water, and they worry it might be an illness and that's why he never removes his helmet. Maham then offers a bag of coins as a sign of gratitude, but Marin says that wasn't part of the deal. The man insists it's the least he can do and says goodbye, leaving the payment with the protagonist. Upon opening the cloth bag, our hero discovers it's actually full of potatoes, and stands there in silence, looking at the unexpected gift, seeming somewhat touched. Next, the knight leaves the potatoes with a sleeping man nearby and continues on his way. He reflects that a lot has happened, but he's finally back in his hometown. Walking through the city, he notices that the urban landscape looks very different from his memories, and then spots a busy bakery, recognizing the place. From there, the protagonist knows his destination is just around the next corner, the place he considered his beloved and true home since he was a child. Finally, he reaches his destination, the Raya's orphanage, where he grew up with his family. But upon arriving at the location, he finds a toy store in its place and is utterly perplexed. He wonders if he took the wrong path, but is sure the orphanage was right there. Suddenly, a man exits the store and asks if the knight needs help. The protagonist explains that this was the location of the St. Raya's orphanage and asks where it went. The owner replies that he's the second proprietor and has never heard of such a place. Marin insists the orphanage was here, but the man says he really doesn't know it. Just then, an old man sitting nearby calls out to the hero and asks about the place. The man explains he's never seen it but heard it existed a long time ago. The knight asks what he means, and the elder says he remembers a rumor, and then reveals that the orphanage burned down, leaving the protagonist stunned by the news. It turns out everything was destroyed during a terrible and violent dragon attack. The scene shifts to a memory of a monotonous life, devoid of dreams or happy moments. Amid the emptiness, the only thing he could remember was the warmth of a dinner table, a warmth that came from his family, who had tragically passed away long before him. And so, in a deeply tragic way, his first and short life came to an end. He awakens to the sight of a fish mobile, wondering why the ceiling is so bright. Suddenly, two children look down at him and excitedly shout that the baby is finally awake. One of them runs to call their sister while the other stays, smiling at the newborn. He wonders what's happening, as his last memory was of a fatal accident. In that instant, someone approaches and tells the boys not to shout and scare the baby. A person then gently picks him up and lifts him into the air. A smiling nun welcomes him with open arms, asking if he slept well, and tells him that from this day on, the baby is part of the orphanage family. This was his first memory in this new world, the warmth of a family he no longer had. In another memory, we see a bag of coins being given as a donation to the orphanage. Now an adult, the protagonist hands over the money, but the nun says it's not necessary. She worries, noting he just got back and is already leaving again, pushing himself too hard. Our hero smiles and reassures her, saying it's an easy job, just clearing out a horde of goblins. The woman seems calmer but still appears a little worried about his mission. Before he leaves, she asks the knight to make a very important promise, and asks him to come back home before it's too late, promising to make his favorite pie. With a thumbs up, the young man vows that he will return home safely. Back in the present, a nun leads him to a tree and asks if this is what he was looking for. She explains that there were no survivors from the dragon attack, so the temple took over the site. The woman asks about his relationship with the deceased, as no one ever visits the memorial. Without a word, the protagonist kneels before the tree in a sign of mourning and respect. The nun understands and apologizes, stepping away to give him some privacy. The knight remembers her promise, recalling how she assured him he'd be back soon. With his hand on the plaque, he laments how she told him there was nothing to worry about. A single tear escapes from his helmet as he thinks of what could have been. He wonders if things would have been different if he had been there to fight the dragon. And heartbroken, he kneels in the pouring rain, clutching the memorial plaque, but he knows it's a question for which he will never have an answer. Now all that remains of his former family is this tree and the memorial plaque. Two nuns watch him with concern, as he's been there for several days without moving. They can only imagine the knight's pain and lament his profound loss. The protagonist remains motionless in the same spot, not budging an inch. Feeling sorry for him, one of the nuns leaves a piece of bread nearby for him to eat, and after leaving the food she turns and silently walks away. Seeing the bread on the ground, our hero finally moves, picking it up with his hand. He then brings the food toward his helmet, trying to eat something, but upon tasting the bread a horrible flavor fills his mouth, and he finds it utterly disgusting. The knight remembers his curse, where he can't eat anything because it all tastes awful. He wonders why he's the only one who feels this, as everyone else eats normally. Desolate, the young man thinks he can't even satisfy his own basic hunger. hunger. He has lost his family again and feels there's no point in living anymore. But suddenly a powerful and unique aroma catches his attention. It wasn't meat, it was something much richer and more flavorful than any food he knew. With the scent, the protagonist's mouth begins to water uncontrollably, and he stands up, leaving the cemetery to follow the delicious aroma. Guided by the smell, he walks through the city streets with a determined look on his face. The odor leads him to a dark, narrow alley between the houses in the neighborhood. Peeking around a corner, he hears people talking about burning monster bodies and the risk of a fine. One of them complains that it'll be a problem if someone eats it thinking it's normal meat. But the other retorts that it's not poisonous, and if he's so worried, just to throw it away. We see them burning a cart full of small monster bodies, and looking at the roasting monster meat, the protagonist finds it incredibly appetizing. He suddenly runs off, and the woman wonders if they've already burned that much. He then returns to the cemetery tree with an air of sadness and dejection. Sitting on the ground, the knight pulls out his sharp knife to begin his work. With the monster meat in hand, he examines it for a moment before taking a bite. Then, without hesitation, the young man sinks his teeth into the piece of roasted meat, and upon tasting the food, he is completely amazed by an explosion of flavor. With a smile spreading across his face, the hero finally says it's absolutely delicious. The taste is better than anything he has ever experienced in his entire life, and the meat has a savory, slightly charred flavor that perfectly suits his palate. He feels the juices burst between his teeth with every bite, and it puts to shame all the other meals he couldn't even swallow before. It's a taste that awakens his primal instincts as it goes down his throat. Suddenly, a strange mark appears on his hand as he eats the meat, and at once, a sharp pain shoots through his hand, and the mark begins to glow. With that, the protagonist collapses to the ground, writhing in agony, not understanding what's happening. Tears stream from his helmet as he sobs with a mixture of pain and sadness. He then apologizes to his family for being the only one who survived. But even overwhelmed by guilt, the young man decides he still wants to live. He clenches his fist and declares his desire to live like a human and eat delicious things. The knight wants to be happy but wonders if he truly deserves such a wish. Sunlight then breaks through the clouds, illuminating the cemetery and bringing a sense of hope. At that moment, a single green leaf drifts down and lands softly on his helmet. A glowing hand appears and touches his wound, as if trying to ease his pain. The hero is startled by the sudden and mysterious touch he feels on his hand, and then the hand vanishes, leaving a green leaf where the mark had been. Sitting before the tree, the knight seems to have found a small measure of peace, and he looks to the future with a newfound determination in his eyes. With his mouth still stained with food, he seems to have finally embraced his new path. The young man then picks up his shield and his bag, preparing to finally leave, and he says goodbye to the tree, saying it's now time for him to move on. The protagonist vows that this time he won't be late coming home, and steps onto the cobblestone street of the city, taking the first step of his journey. And so begins the secret gourmet life of our monster-eating hero. In the heart of Adorama stands a towering spire, the Hexalum Adventurers Guild. All adventurers begin their journeys at this renowned institution. The guild handles a variety of requests from exploring dungeons to defeating monsters, and it also manages every registered adventurer, but not just anyone can join. To register, one must pass a strength test against a training golem. Many adventurers attempt the challenge, but not all succeed. A hooded elf then approaches, preparing for his turn to face the strength test. The golem takes its position, target on its chest, ready for the new challenger's strike. The young elf focuses, preparing a punch with all his might, and we see his focused expression and the pointed ears peeking out from under his green hood. He scores 5,312, breaking the day's record. The elf celebrates his victory, having impressed everyone with his surprising power. People in the crowd comment that he got first place, even beating a massive warrior, and everyone wonders where such a powerful rookie like him came from. Another adventurer approaches to congratulate him, hoping to form a party, but the elf is clearly annoyed by the man's forwardness and his proposal. The protagonist intervenes, but the elf furiously shouts not to be touched like that. Our hero scratches his head and apologizes, a little embarrassed by the confusion. Suddenly, a rat man official appears, scolding Marin for not having taken the test yet. The employee sighs in frustration, but the knight assures him he can pass with ease. The elf turns to our hero with a gentle expression, and advises the protagonist to relax a bit before taking his test. The young man explains that if the knight is tense, he won't perform his best. With a thumbs up, he says that countrymen need to help each other out and bends the hero farewell. Marin is confused, wondering what he meant by that strange word. An elf receptionist named Dahlia greets the new recruit who just passed the test. The blonde young man waves to her with a confident smile, and she congratulates him on his first place score, but he plays it down as if it were nothing. The receptionist then hands the official adventurer certificate to the young elf, but he's shocked to see it's only rank D, despite having the highest score of the day. She explains that to rank up, a proven track record is needed, and he seems impatient. Without wasting time, the elf asks for a quest, and the receptionist checks the board. She finds two perfect options, a subjugation quest and a collection quest, but the elf seems a bit frustrated with the choices and decides to take both. However, the receptionist informs him that these quests require a party and cannot be done alone. She explains that the dungeon hasn't been cleared in a long time, so the monster population has grown, and due to the increased danger, all rank D adventurers must tackle this quest in a group. Dahlia the elf looks around, annoyed, now needing to find teammates. Nearby, a burly man lets out a loud, obnoxious laugh. Meanwhile, another adventurer looks completely bored with nothing to do. Dahlia wonders who on earth he could team up with in a place like this. Suddenly, something huge flies past him and smashes into the guild counter. The blonde elf is stunned by the sudden explosion and startled by the impact. A large piece of wood is thrown, nearly hitting him, and the receptionist shouts, asking if everyone is okay and if anyone was hurt. Dahlia confirms he's fine and asks what happened, but he doesn't look fine. They then spot the training golem lying on the floor amidst the wreckage of the counter. The elf can't understand how the one-ton golem flew like that. Through the settling dust, the protagonist appears, framed by a huge hole in the wall, and points to the fallen golem, looking a little embarrassed by the situation. The knight bows deeply and apologizes profusely for the damage he caused. The receptionist assures him it's okay since no one was hurt and he didn't cheat. A man comments that he's never seen anything like it in all his years working there. Our hero offers to pay for the damages, and the receptionist begins to calculate the cost. She lists the wall repairs, broken furniture, the price of the golem, and lost business, and presents the bill for 2 gold coins and 30 silver. The protagonist then checks his money pouch, only to find it completely empty. He asks about the payment deadline, and she says he can pay when it's convenient, but with a dark smile she warns that the guild will take legal action if he takes too long. Now an official adventure, he must work to pay off his massive debt. The elf approaches and offers to form a party, surprising our protagonist, and with a wink, he says that countrymen should help each other in tough times like these. The knight is confused, wondering why the elf suddenly wants to team up with him. Using his appraisal skill, he sees that Dali is a level 36 elf archer. The blonde archer explains they're heading to the same place, but Marin is still suspicious of his kindness. The receptionist notes that their class combination is perfect for the quest, and as a warrior and an archer, the guild employee thinks the pair is ideal for the job. Our hero is worried about this hastily formed team, but the elf points out they haven't even introduced themselves. The elf then extends his hand to the knight, saying it's a pleasure to meet him. The protagonist isn't thrilled but knows he needs to pay off his debt as quickly as possible. Seeing the receptionist's expectant smile, he feels the pressure and knows he has to accept. So Marin shakes his hand and introduces himself to his new teammate. Dahlia smiles, saying they should do their best on their first quest together. Our hero wanted to avoid parties but admits the elf seems quite capable. The receptionist then announces that the team has been successfully registered with the guild, but suddenly the elf pulls his hand back as if he's been shocked. The protagonist asks what's wrong and the blonde archer asks if he's even human. With wide frightened eyes, Dahlia repeats the question, looking terrified. The scene then shifts to a forest where Marin is carefully studying a map. They finally arrive at the entrance of the gargoyle dungeon to begin their quest. Dahlia complains that his companion is just standing there in front of the dungeon entrance, and grumbles that he hates teaming up with humans, calling them a vulgar species. The protagonist reflects that elves are tall, beautiful, and also live for a long time, and he knows they were once enslaved, which gave them a complicated history with humans. But he remembers that the guild receptionist didn't treat him that way. A dark aura emanates from the dungeon, but the knight seems completely unfazed. The two then enter the structure, which resembles a haunted castle filled with gargoyles. Our hero comments that it feels like a different world inside the dungeon. Suddenly, he spots several flying monsters and wonders if they are the quest targets. The gremlins are level 18 and evolve into gargoyles as they mature. Dahlia tells the human to get out of his way and not to interfere with the mission in any way. The protagonist turns and starts to walk away, which seems to confuse the elf. The blonde archer yells at the knight not to ignore him, and our hero offers a justification. He calls Marin rude, but the protagonist replies that he's over 100 years old. The elf is shocked and speechless at his new companion's revelation. Our hero suggests they stay out of each other's way and focus on their own tasks, and then continues walking, but the blonde archer tells him to prepare first. The knight explains that preparation is unnecessary since the gremlins are low level. Dahlia is surprised, wondering if the human saw his stats and is actually stronger than him. Furious, the elf points an accusing finger, stating that the protagonist spied on his information. A gremlin flies by, its mouth full of sharp teeth and a huge tongue sticking out. Dahlia continues to shout that stealing information without permission is a breach of etiquette, and calls the knight shameless, his face contorted with pure rage. Suddenly, one of the monsters dives toward him, attacking with its giant mouth. Marin warns him to keep his voice down, as it's basic dungeon etiquette. With a single swift strike, the protagonist takes down several gremlins at once. The elf is splattered with the creature's fluids and gets annoyed by his companion's actions. The knight then confesses that he saw his information when they shook hands earlier. The blonde archer is shocked by the human's audacity, and our hero proposes a deal. He says that if Dahlia despises him so much, they should just finish the quest and go their separate ways. The elf is irritated by the suggestion and tells the knight not to get in his way in the fight. He tells the human to do his job, stating that that he'll take care of the gargoyles himself. In the distance, a gargoyle watches the pair, and the protagonist tells the elf to do as he pleases. In the blink of an eye, Marin defeats several gremlins and starts collecting their eyes. In mere seconds, he had already taken down 49 and was almost finished, and the knight calculates that 50 eyes should be enough to complete his part of the quest. He then glances over and sees Dahlia facing a level 21 gargoyle. The gargoyle is the evolved form of a gremlin, with its entire body hard as stone. The elf looks tired and out of breath as he prepares to fight the monsters, and then charges toward the beast, bow in hand, ready to attack the gargoyle. The protagonist watches Dahlia fight, thinking to himself that he probably won't get done in, and with that, he decides to prepare a meal while his companion fights alone. He wonders how to cook gremlin meat, but quickly gets an idea, and since the monster looks like a frog, he decides to prepare it in a similar way. He takes only the parts that look edible but notes there isn't much meat, and since there's not much to work with, he decides to make small skewers. To add some variety, he also decides to grill the creature's innards. The gremlin skewers are then placed over a makeshift fire to roast, and just like that, our hero's special dish is finally ready to eat. He thinks it doesn't look too bad for a first try and gets ready for a taste. The knight then takes a big bite of the freshly cooked gremlin skewer, and eats enthusiastically, clearly enjoying the flavor of the monster meat. He declares the food delicious and that monsters are indeed tasty. The flavor is more like duck than chicken, with a slightly spicy kick. Our hero thinks it would be even better with a dipping sauce, and continues to eat his skewer peacefully in the middle of the dark dungeon. Suddenly, a notification warns him that he's been poisoned, and the knight collapses. He wonders what's happening and realizes he can't move his body. The protagonist understands that the spicy taste he enjoyed was actually poison, and panics realizing he has no antidote to cure himself. Desperate, the protagonist cries out for an antidote, but then something clicks in his mind. He realizes the gremlin's own bodies must contain a natural neutralizer for the poison, and with that, the knight rips out the liver of one of the monsters to eat it as a cure. It's a risky gamble, but he eats the raw organ in the hope of surviving. A message then confirms that the poison has been successfully neutralized in his system. Relieved, the hero celebrates his survival, taking a deep breath and feeling much better. He scratches his head, thinking he was almost taken out by his own hunger. So that's why people don't eat monsters. It's not just because they're gross. Suddenly, Dahlia appears and is startled by the bizarre scene before him, and shouts, asking what on earth the knight is doing. His face panicked. The elf finds him sitting on the ground, surrounded by monster parts and cooking pots. He calls humans barbarians but says he never imagined it could be this bad. The protagonist cuts him off, saying he knows elves are vegetarians, and adds that it doesn't give him the right to insult carnivores, but the elf loses it. Dahlia explains that he's witnessing a nightmare and wants to go home immediately. He demands to know why Marin is still here when he's already finished his part of the quest. The knight explains that since they accepted the quest as a pair, they are both responsible, and also reminds him that the guild receptionist could get in trouble if something goes wrong. The elf is speechless and flustered, knowing the human is absolutely right. Our hero then offers to help hunt the gargoyles so they can finish quickly. The elf insists he doesn't need a human's help, but the knight ignores him. Dahlia is confused by the pan in Marin's hand, wondering what he plans to do. The hero explains that he used to be a shield bearer and prepares to fight. He uses his taunt ability, drawing the attention of all nearby monsters. Gremlins charge toward him, their eyes glowing with anger and fury, and even distant gargoyles are drawn in by the knight's challenge. Dahlia is dumbfounded, wondering what a cooking pan has to do with being a shield bearer. He panics as he sees the large number of monsters now coming their way. Taunt is the most iconic ability of shield bearers, used to protect their allies. Normally, the ability is used to draw enemies, allowing the party to defend themselves. The elf calls the protagonist crazy for luring every creature in the dungeon. The knight explains that the ability is also effective for luring flying monsters, but suddenly realizes the skill seems more powerful than it used to be. He tosses the pan aside, deciding that's not his problem right now, and gets ready. Using his swordsmanship and martial arts skills, he increases his damage and agility. The hero takes a stance, ready to face the approaching horde of monsters. Dahlia complains about the mess and decides to keep his distance to provide support, but suddenly he is amazed by what happens next. In an instant, Marin defeats all the monsters with impressive speed. The elf's jaw drops, and he mutters that this has to be some kind of joke. He thinks about how he struggled to hunt 5 gargoyles, and now Marin has wiped the floor with them. A blue aura surrounds the protagonist, and Dahlia wonders who this man really is. As they exit the dungeon, the elf asks the knight to wait a moment so they can talk. He asks if Marin agrees to split the reward even though he did all the work, but the protagonist says there's no need to change it, reminding him he wanted to finish fast. With that, Dahlia thanks him for the help, still looking a little embarrassed by the situation, and turns away ashamed, unable to believe his companion's generosity. Suddenly, Suddenly, the elf hears a strange noise and gestures for the knight to stop and listen. Our hero is surprised, admitting he didn't know elves' ears could move like that. Dahlia is shocked by the comment and turns to scold the protagonist, but the knight ignores him and keeps walking, leaving the elf even more annoyed. From the top of a cliff, Dahlia spots a stopped wagon with 2 men and another elf. One of the men is yelling at the driver for not avoiding a deer, which delayed the trip, and then punches the elf in the face, calling him a useless, slow slave. The young elf cowers in fear, apologizing and begging him to stop. Dahlia is furious, commenting that this is exactly why he despises all humans. He shouts the humans preach about the end of slavery while secretly trafficking other races. With his bow in hand, the elf tells Marin to draw his weapon for some payback, but the knight asks why he should do that, leaving the elf completely stunned. He explains they can't know if the elf is an illegal slave just by looking at him. Dahlia claims he heard them mention the black market, but the knight suggests just reporting them. Disappointed, the elf says he thought this human was different, but he's just like the others, and then decides to handle it himself, readying his bow to attack the men. Suddenly, the protagonist smells a strange scent coming from the trafficker's wagon. He realizes the smell is coming from the vehicle transporting the enslaved elves. Inside the cart, an elf mother clutches her terrified daughter, trying to comfort her. Seeing the child in danger, the knight seems to change his mind about getting involved. Dahlia wonders if he can handle this alone, but quickly gathers his courage. He tells himself he trained for moments like this and must fight for his suffering people, and then fires an arrow toward the wagon to stop the traffickers. The arrow explodes right next to the vehicle, creating a cloud of dust and smoke. The blonde archer is confused by the unexpected result of his attack. The explosion throws the 2 men to the ground, leaving them bewildered about what happened. Amidst the dust, they wonder what that was and what to do next. Suddenly, a sword flies through the air and embeds itself in the wagon's wheel, immobilizing it. Dahlia is surprised and wonders what that was and why Marin decided to help. The protagonist has a flashback of the nun holding him in her arms as a baby, and states that he doesn't care about adult matters, but the child is innocent. One of the traffickers is shocked by the flying sword and tells the other to look up. From the top of the cliff, the 2 adventurers stare down at the men, ready to fight. Frightened, one of the traffickers demands to know who they are and where they came from, and the man yells that they won't get away with attacking his property. Furious, Dahlia declares he has come to save his kin, who are being enslaved, but the trafficker just scoffs, claiming they are licensed merchants and the elves are legal property. The elf is shocked to learn they work for the house of Marquis Bechtel. The man points to the crest on the wagon and demands an apology for the damage. He calls the elves ignorant, saying they do nothing but cause trouble. Dahlia's eyes widen with rage at the trafficker's insult, but the protagonist calmly points out that the crest on the wagon is not the real Bechtel family crest. The elf prepares to shoot, but the knight draws his attention to a specific detail. The trafficker insists the wolf symbol is there, but our hero corrects him. He points out that the wolf's eyes on the crest look normal, with no flaws, and the ancestor of the Bechtel family had only one eye, a detail reflected in the true crest. With that, he proves the symbol is a fake, as the depicted wolf has both eyes. The traffickers are speechless, stunned by the mysterious knight's revelation. The protagonist adds that the punishment for impersonating a noble is the maximum penalty. Cornered, the traffickers' leader orders his men to attack the adventuring duo. Our hero reflects that mercenaries used to avoid fighting each other out of professional courtesy, and then dodges a blow, commenting that it seems times have certainly changed. With a single powerful punch to the chest, the knight easily takes down the mercenary. The man spits something out, his eyes rolling back as he feels the force of the impact, and with that, he is sent flying backward, colliding hard with a nearby tree. The shock is so powerful that the tree trunk splits in 2. Next, the mercenary falls to the ground, groaning in pain, unable to get up. One of the traffickers is in shock, seeing the giant be defeated with a single punch. The gang's leader then gets up, cursing the adventurers for attacking them, but as the pair prepares for another fight, the man surrenders, terrified at the chance of being defeated. Later in, the rescued elf family expresses their gratitude to Maran. The elf mother says she doesn't know how she can ever thank them for saving their lives. Dahlia replies that he couldn't ignore his people and just did what anyone would do. He then approaches the knight and asks if everything was settled with the guards. The elf explains that the traffickers were arrested and that even their relatives are involved. Just then, the little elf girl tugs on the protagonist's cape to get his attention. When our hero turns around, her mother asks if he's the uncle who saved them. The little girl smiles and says the knight was very cool, thanking him for the rescue. The family then says goodbye, and the little girl waves to the helmeted uncle and his friend. The protagonist silently watches the family leave happy and safe. Dahlia then turns to the hero, saying he never thought he'd say this to a human, and with a very embarrassed look, he thanks him for saving his fellow elves. He hates to admit it, but it was thanks to a human that he was able to save his people. However, the elf's demeanor changes drastically, and he demands money from our protagonist. The knight then makes it clear that if Dahlia is truly grateful, he prefers payment in cash, and claims that cash is more reliable than words, which seems to confuse the elf. Outraged, the blonde archer complains that he was just showing gratitude for being saved by a human, and right after, he tosses a bag of coins to Marin, telling him to get out of his sight. Dahlia then calls him a greedy pig and declares he will never trust a human again. The next day, the protagonist returns to the guild to turn in the items from his quest, and hands over the bags with the gremlin eyes and other materials he collected. The receptionist congratulates him on successfully completing his first task, and praises the knight for handling such a difficult assignment so effectively. The woman then hands him the quest payment, but the amount seems very low. Our hero considers the reward small, but she explains the reason for the deduction. As per guild regulations, his outstanding debt will be deducted from his rewards. The knight is surprised but vows to pay it all off as quickly as he can, and then decides to accept another quest to continue chipping away at his huge debt. With that, he heads to the notice board to look for a new job. The protagonist thinks that while money is important, he's in the mood for something different to eat. One of the quests is in the Stowe's dungeon, but it only has rock-type monsters. Another auction is an orc encampment, and our hero has never been to one before, and wonders what orc meat tastes like and if it's similar to pork. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice and sees the girl he met on the carriage. She asks what he's doing there and if he became an adventurer like her. The woman jokes that she thought he was already gone for good, and the knight looks embarrassed. She apologizes, saying she got excited to see him again and decides to introduce her party. Olga is the party leader, and Kate is the team's mage who accompanies Mickey. She introduces Marin as the strong but light-eating mercenary she met. The girl boasts that the three of them have been a team for a long time and work well together. Our hero thinks that a party with two archers and a mage is somewhat unstable. She explains they've been looking for a tank for a week and can't enter dungeons without one. With that, she extends her hand and makes a proposal to our protagonist, and Mickey invites him to join the team as the tank they so desperately need. The knight is surprised and speechless at the young woman's unexpected proposal. The scene then cuts to a forest where the new group is hunting orcs. A giant green monster attacks Mickey, but she manages to narrowly dodge the blow. The beast rears up to attack again, but the protagonist blocks it with his shield. The orc roars in pain from the impact, and the mage casts an explosion spell, and the magic detonates right in the monster's face, causing massive damage. The orc's hand falls to the ground, signaling the team's victory over the enemy. Mickey celebrates their synergy, noting they've already defeated two monsters today, and says that since Marin joined the group, the hunts have gotten much easier. Suddenly, the group hears a strange rumbling, and Olga wonders if it's an earthquake. But then, a horde of furious orcs appears, charging straight for them. Mickey is terrified by the number of monsters, guessing they heard the others' cries, and with no time to think, Olga shouts for everyone to run for their lives. But Hecate trips and falls, getting left behind as the others flee. A giant orc approaches the fallen mage, raising its club to attack. The girl is frozen in fear, unable to move or react to the imminent blow, and her eyes fill with terror as she watches the monster's club swing toward her. But suddenly her vision fills with red, and the mage doesn't understand what happened. The protagonist appeared, defeating all the orcs in an instant to save her. The others run back and ask if she's okay, and the mage nods relieved. Olga is impressed by the knight's power and wonders how strong he really is. The last remaining orc struggles to get up and attack, but is already riddled with arrows. After defeating 10 monsters, the leader decides it's time for a short break. They talk about Marin's incredible strength and how he saved Hecate from the orc. The mage then realizes she hasn't thanked him and looks around for the knight who saved her. She sniffs the air with her beastly nose and catches a very familiar aroma. Hecate notes that the place smells like roasted meat, which Mickey finds strange in the middle of a dungeon. They find the protagonist alone near a campfire, roasting something over the flames. Mickey jokes that he was the source of the smell and should have told everyone, but they are horrified to see that the knight is cooking the orc's meat. Mickey shouts, asking what he's doing, since that wasn't part of the quest. The protagonist had prepared a delicious grilled orc leg to try, and he hoped it would be like pork, but the aroma reminds him of a mix of beef and pork. With that, the knight takes a huge bite of the meat to discover its flavor, and is surprised to find that the meat's taste is actually delicious. With every bite, the juices explode in his mouth, and the flavor is perfectly cooked. His friends watch in disgust as he devours the monster meat with such pleasure. He thinks that next time, he'll season it with salt and pepper to make it even better. With a fork, the hero admires the orc steak, thinking there's no way it could be bad. He loves the simple seasoning and the aroma of the pepper, which pair perfectly. Olga and Mickey are in disbelief that he's actually enjoying the food. Mickey gestures for the others to back away from the knight, as if she's afraid of him. He thinks the team is done for but ponders that he can use orc meat in other recipes. Suddenly, Olga calls out to him and puts a hand on his shoulder to talk. She says she's heard of places where people eat monsters out of necessity, and Mickey assures him they won't kick him out just because his tastes are a bit unusual. That night, the group camps out, and Olga tells everyone to go to sleep. The next day, a huge, bloated orc suddenly appears before the team, but with the protagonist on the front line, the group prepares to fight without fear. The giant orc charges with its wooden club, ready to crush everyone, but our hero defends against the attack with his shield without any difficulty. With the creature distracted, the archers fire their arrows with deadly precision. Later, the mage watches the protagonist protagonist cook with a disgusted expression on her face. Suddenly, the ground gives way, and the entire group plummets into an unexpected hole. Around the campfire, Olga asks why Marin sleeps alone, and he replies it's just easier that way. Miki seems lost in thought, and the blonde guy offers to take the first watch. The mage thanks him and wishes him good night as the knight prepares to sleep, and begins to relax to the comforting crackle of the fire burning through the night. As he sleeps, the protagonist begins to dream of memories from his distant past. In his dream, he sees his old party laughing about a priest who loved to fight. One of them asks another why he went to get firewood if the fire was already lit. The hero fondly recalls the gentle smile of one of his old friends. Suddenly, a voice shouts Marin's full name, jolting him from his sleep. He sits up, confused, and sees his entire team standing over him with serious expressions. The knight asks why everyone is awake when it's not his turn for watch duty. Kate then points a glowing hand at him and tells her companion not to move. The mage warns that her spell is ready and that he'd better answer their questions. While he was sleeping, the group used an appraisal stone to find out his level, and Mickey then points at him in shock, demanding to know what the heck they just saw. The screen reveals that Marin's level and stats are unknown, and he has the title Kinslayer. Faced with this, the protagonist remains silent, saying nothing about the revelation. The Kinslayer title is given to those who have defeated over 100 members of their own race, and it also increases attack power against individuals of the same species by 5%. Miki is horrified and asks if he really did that to over 100 people. Olga notes that he probably doesn't have a criminal record, but this is another matter. Kate then demands he explain the title and say if it's all just a misunderstanding, but the protagonist remains silent, unable to give his team an answer. His companions press him, asking why he won't say anything, and if he joined them with ill intentions. The knight turns away and simply apologizes, without offering any explanation. Hearing this, Olga says he can't ignore the situation, regardless of his strength or diet. The party leader states that she can no longer trust someone with a history like that, and because of this, she decides she wants the protagonist to leave the group immediately. The knight understands the situation and gets up to leave without causing any more trouble. He then gathers his belongings and prepares to depart, leaving the team behind. The scene flashes back 100 years to the Tursan forest in the south. We see a red goblin, its face twisted into a mask of pure rage and hatred. A younger red-haired Marin fights against two monsters at the same time. An archer from his old party celebrates as the goblins fall into her trap, and with a precise shot she fires her arrows, hitting both monsters at once. After the battle, the goblins' bodies are scattered across the forest floor. The party leader smiles and asks if everyone is okay and if anyone got hurt. She praises the archer for taking down two at once, and the woman accepts the compliment. A companion says there are 18 left, but Marin calls him a loudmouth for not fighting. The leader ignores their bickering and asks if he's organized the proof tokens. She then calls for Charlotte, and the protagonist says he's ready to move on. Walking through the forest, the group complains about the receptionist and the lack of goblins, and they speculate that the monsters either hid or went deeper into the woods. The hero's friend makes a joke about it, but Marin freezes, sensing something is wrong. He tries to get his companion's attention, but no one seems to hear him. Suddenly, his entire team turns to face him, their eyes glowing with an empty red, and terrified, the young man finds himself surrounded by gazes that ask why he did it. A voice then questions him, asking why he was the only one who survived the attack. At that moment, the protagonist wakes up from the nightmare with a startled cry. Sitting up in bed, the knight is breathless and shaken by the terrible memory. He gets up and looks out the window of the inn where he spent the night alone. From the second floor, our hero observes the activity in the main hall below, and upon descending the stairs, he notices that everyone in the tavern is staring at him. People whisper among themselves, wondering if he's the guy from the rumors. One of them says he's the slayer who attacks rookies and is shocked to see him at the guild. The protagonist concludes that the rumors have spread and that people always tend to exaggerate. He decides to ignore them and heads to the counter, where the receptionist has something for him. The woman congratulates him, announcing that as of today, he has been promoted to rank C. Spotting a harpy quest, he imagines fried chicken and thinks he'd like to try it. Suddenly, a voice calls him a greedy pig, and the protagonist turns, surprised. It was Dahlia, the elf he already knew, who greeted him with a sarcastic tone. The blonde archer then comments on the rumors, but our hero ignores him, accepting the harpy quest. Annoyed, Dahlia yells at him, and suddenly, the knight sees a pair of red ears in his field of vision. A beast girl asks if this is the human Dahlia was talking about, and turns to the protagonist with a confident smile, getting face to face with him. The elf then introduces her as the leader of the new party he just joined. The woman introduces herself as a Motar and says she's heard of him, but Dahlia cuts her off. Our hero sizes her up, thinking she looks like a martial artist based on her gear. Using his appraisal, he finds out she's level 59 and her class is priestess. The knight is flabbergasted, wondering if he's seeing things, as her class is priestess. Imotar proudly confirms her class, but the protagonist still doesn't get it. He thinks priests are support units and that she looks nothing like a holy person. Dahlia explains he was looking for a non-human party and came across her ad. The woman says she heard the rumors at the guild, and that's why she made the suggestion to the elf. Imitar says she approved of him because even though he's human, he holds the Kinslayer title. The protagonist claims he has no idea what they're talking about, and the elf scoffs. With a smile, the beast girl extends her hand and invites the human to join their party. The knight is skeptical of the offer, but the woman asks if he has another choice. Our hero looks around and sees everyone in the guild whispering about him, and with no other option, he agrees to join the party temporarily for the quest. Imitar celebrates the human's decision, and Dahlia smiles, pleased with the outcome. The leader says they're going to test his skills, and the knight asks where. With a determined look, the girl replies that their destination is obvious, and points to the quest poster, shouting that they're going to the Harpy dungeon. Now, in the dungeon, two creatures with red eyes fly toward them, screeching loudly. The new team prepares for battle, and their leader gives the order to eliminate the creatures. The protagonist faces the monsters, thinking that flying enemies are a pain. He wonders if he can reach them with a jump, but something whizzes past him. An arrow strikes a harpy, and Marin thinks having an archer makes things easier. Dahlia declares he won't let a human steal his prey and tells the hero to back off. The other creature then screeches and dives at high speed to attack the group. Imitar yells at the knight to raise his shield and brace for impact. The beast girl then uses her new companion's shield as a springboard, and with a powerful boost, our hero launches her with all his might toward the monster. In the air, the woman delivers a powerful punch right to the face of the high-speeding harpy. The blow is so strong that the monster is defeated instantly, and the two land safely. The girl praises their teamwork, but he asks her to warn him next time. The protagonist thinks that having companions to fight alongside isn't so bad after all. They've already defeated 3 harpies, and their leader decides it's time for a break. But while clearing the area, the knight noticed something strange among the feathers. Suddenly, a cute pink creature emerges, holding a harpy feather. Dahlia calls him a country bumpkin and asks if he's never heard of living dolls. He explains they are mana-powered pet golems, and this one is a limited edition. The elf then praises the little golem for finishing its task of cleaning up the feathers. The blonde archer adds that they don't need to eat and can even help in combat. Imitar jokes that Dahlia treats cute things like they're real babies. Noticing the protagonist's fixed stare, the elf becomes unsettled and a bit scared. The leader shouts that it's a golem and that Marin is strictly forbidden from eating it. The elf comments that they're in luck, as they've captured almost half the harpies. The woman then asks Dahlia why he hesitated to introduce the human to her. Suddenly, the girl smells a delicious aroma of roasted chicken coming from nearby. The elf realizes Marin has disappeared, and the leader gets annoyed with whoever is cooking alone. Meanwhile, our hero is carving up the harpy meat to prepare his meal. He's already seasoned it with salt, and with the pan now hot, he's ready to cook. The knight pan fries the meat, thinking that the sizzling sound of food never gets old. And with a divine glow, the pan-fried harpy shoulder is finally ready. The knight notes that it looks like chicken and takes a bite to find out. But upon tasting the food, he is completely blown away by an explosion of flavor. He observes that the texture is similar to chicken, but the taste is much more intense. Suddenly, his companions rush over to him, shouting for him to stop immediately. The hero offers them some, but the girl yells that she's not mad because he's hungry. The woman is exasperated, and the elf declares this is the most horrifying scene he's ever witnessed. He tries to explain that a harpy's face isn't like a human's, but they won't listen. Dahlia laments having seen something so cruel, while the party leader starts to drool. Both are speechless as they look at the dish, taking in the aroma of the meat. The beast girl is conflicted. It's a monster, but it looks incredibly delicious. She then refuses to look at what she considers a great blasphemy. Just then, the protagonist offers her a piece, which she refuses with a look of disgust, and he says it's a shame because it's really good, and the smell makes her extremely tempted. The woman loses control in the face of temptation, and Dahlia tries to calm her down before she attacks. She screams because of the smell, and our hero remembers the other dish he was preparing. He then grabs the other pan, saying he overcooked it, but it's ready. With a divine glow, the roasted harpy leg is finally ready to be savored. Imitar is shocked to learn he's going to eat the legs, and he replies that he's always wanted to try. Ignoring her opinion, the protagonist takes a huge bite of the leg and loves the meat, which is soft and sweet like a pudding, declaring that this is pure bliss. The protagonist thinks it would be better with gravy and decides to take the rest home. Seeing this, Dahlia complains he can't relax with the night around, and then asks what the hero is eating, and the man offers him a piece. Suddenly, the elf shouts that the talons are poisonous, and the protagonist collapses, paralyzed. Desperate, he tells Imodar to use a healing spell on the idiotic human, but the girl says she doesn't know how, claiming she never learned that spell because it's complicated. Just then, another harpy appears, drawn by the noise, and the elf blames the girl. She then tells the elf to get out of her way so she can show off a new spell, and with that, the girl unleashes a massive fireball that incinerates everything in its path. Dahlia is devastated, as the magic hit his golem, which he hadn't even owned for a week. After the dust settles, only the girl remains standing while the others are on the ground. Furious, the elf grabs her, complaining about his precious golem that was destroyed. She apologizes and he says he'll never forget this as the hero reflects on the chaos. Back at the guild, the receptionist accepts the quest items with a smile. The party leader asks her to dispose of the harpy meat they brought. The elf complains the day was mentally exhausting, and the girl offers to get him a new golem. Suddenly, the knight appears with the monster's talons, startling the woman. She asks why he brought them, and he replies it would be a waste to leave them behind. The girl tells him to put them in his inventory, but the protagonist doesn't know what that is. Then he remembers he has something similar and immediately opens his inventory screen. The screen displays 30 storage slots, and he says he completely forgot about it. The protagonist realizes he's been carrying heavy things for no reason, which explains the looks. He puts a hand to his head, thinking he can't believe he forgot something so basic. Worried about his mental state, he's interrupted by Imodar calling his name. She asks how the quest went, saying they work well together, and he agrees. With that, the leader extends her hand and invites him to officially join the party. The knight shakes her hand, and she celebrates the fact that they are now a real team. He thinks it's better to have allies than to go on quests alone, and so the protagonist finally accepts, and the girl celebrates with a cry of joy. The leader says she's going to register them as a formal party and runs off. Our hero thinks a lot has already happened, but now they are officially companions. Dahlia corrects him, saying he's counting on him for the rest of his short human life. The knight then thinks of Charlotte and says he's counting on her, too. He remains silent for a moment before greeting his new companions. The girl returns excitedly, announcing that the registration for the party is complete, and shows them the paper with the team's name, and both are shocked by what they read. With a huge smile, the leader announces that the party's name is the Messy Team. The elf freaks out, asking why she would register them with such a ridiculous name. She explains she heard the human muttering the word and decided to use it, and said she liked the sound of it and that it somehow touched her heart. The elf continues to protest, but the leader insists she couldn't think of another name. Desperate, the blonde archer laments that his achievements will be tied to this name. The protagonist ignores the argument and decides to go back to his room to eat the meat. The girl calls out to him, asking where he's going, but he just says he's going to his room. At this, the leader decides to throw a welcome party for the new party member. Later, at a tavern, the team toasts to the success of the quest and their new member. Imoutar tells everyone to eat and drink their fill, as the night is still young. Dahlia still hasn't accepted the name, but the girl says it's already registered and can't be changed. The elf gets annoyed, but our hero just looks at the delicious food on the table. He remains seated in silence observing the feast, unable to eat anything, but decides to take a bite anyway, not wanting to be rude to his friends. Dahlia complains about the food's taste, while the knight finds it as horrible as ever. The leader then changes the subject, saying she has something to discuss with the protagonist. With her drink still on her face, she reveals that the party's goal is to reach rank A. Our hero asks why, and she explains that everyone has their own reasons. It is explained that adventurers can rise in rank by passing exams. To reach rank A, one must be recognized by the guild for their strength and accomplishments, and the content of the promotion exam is a mystery to almost all adventurers. The girl then starts talking about her motivations, but the knight seems distracted. Imoutar reveals that her younger siblings are still enslaved, captured by humans. A man promised that if she could get the money in 3 years, he would free them. She explains that the only way to free them is by paying to buy their freedom. The protagonist is confused by the word revolution and doesn't understand what it means. The other two are shocked, asking if he's unaware of such a major event. Dahlia then decides to explain this important event in simple terms. He recounts that for centuries humans enslaved other races for various reasons, and his own family was among those captured and exploited by humans. They were kept in prisons to prevent escape and used to satisfy selfish desires. Many of his race withered away in those dark cells, losing body and spirit, and anyone who tried to escape and was caught met a terrible and cruel end. Tired of the tyranny, many races united to form an alliance against the humans. This marked the beginning of the revolution, which humans called the War of the Races. They presented several demands to the humans, one of which was the abolition of slavery. The alliance declared all-out war if their demands were not met, and in the end, the humans accepted the conditions, signing a peace treaty between the races. With this, previously hidden races began to emerge, and it's now common to see them. Dahlia explains that it's because of this treaty that they are allowed to be adventurers, and that's why she became an adventurer, to earn money quickly and free her family. The knight then turns to the elf and asks about his own circumstances. Dahlia reveals that his goal is to become the elder of the forest where he grew up. His family has protected the forest for generations, but this rule is forced upon each child. Although his older sister detests the idea, everyone pressures her to accept the position. The blonde archer then clenches his fist, stating that he is more capable of protecting the forest. The council decided that if he could prove his worth, they would allow him to become the elder, and for that reason, becoming a rank A adventurer is a necessary necessary step for his goal. The protagonist thinks that everyone here has a desperate reason to fight and win. The elf says they would be happy if he joined them in their goal as well. The party leader then asks if the human has a goal he wishes to achieve. The knight remembers the tree in the cemetery and his own lost past. His companions notice his silence and say he doesn't have to talk if it's difficult. But our hero clenches his fist, saying that perhaps this was his purpose all along. With firm determination, the protagonist reveals there is a dragon he intends to defeat. The other two are stunned by this revelation and ask if he really said dragon. He then clarifies that it's the same one that attacked Adorama and burned the village to the ground. The knight says that when he finds it, there's something he absolutely needs to do. His friends fall silent and our hero thinks they must believe he's joking. But suddenly, the elf smiles and says the human's ambitions are greater than theirs. The girl jokes, asking if he plans to eat the dragon and calls him crazy. Hearing this, the elf adds that ranking up is also his goal to get more information. With their goals aligned, the three toast and resolve to do their best together. The next day, the sun shines over the city. As the new team gets ready, the protagonist decides to relax and prepare a hearty meal for everyone. However, he realizes he's out of money after paying for the room at the inn. Even knowing cooking oil is expensive, he decides to heat the pan to get started, and then uses his storage ability to get the meat he had saved. A blue light glows in his hand as he accesses his personal inventory, and he's surprised to see that the raw meat is perfectly preserved inside. The knight realizes his inventory is the perfect space for storing food. The first thing he does is beat the eggs to prepare the batter, and then carefully breads the pieces of meat in breadcrumbs. Then, he places the meat in the hot oil, and the sizzling sound fills the kitchen. Our hero smiles, thinking the sound of frying food is something he'll never get tired of. He flips the pieces to prevent burning and fries them a second time to get them golden brown. And with a divine glow, the fried harpy thighs are finally ready. He thinks that for a first try, the dish turned out very well and prepares to taste it. The knight then takes a huge bite of the fried thigh he just prepared. The crispy coating and juicy meat create the perfect combination for him. He finds the flavor similar to that of a meaty crab and loves it. And the more he eats, the more he wants. And he's glad he made enough for everyone. Suddenly, he hears Dahlia's voice calling for him and knocking on his door. The elf complains that it's already noon and asks the human to open the door. The protagonist opens the door, and the blonde archer asks why he wears his helmet in his room. Dahlia says he has something urgent to discuss, but the knight was in the middle of a meal. The elf then reveals that there seems to be a serious problem with their party leader. Our hero invites him in and asks what happened and if it's important. Seeing the plate of food, the blonde archer is startled and asks if he's cooking again, but he regains his composure, saying the priority now is the girl, not the food. The elf then asks the knight to keep it a secret and requests a loan. The protagonist is confused, having no idea what's going on. With a dark aura, our hero says he doesn't want to hear it and tells the elf to leave, and warns that if the reason isn't good enough, he'll kick him out immediately. With a serious expression, Dahlia reveals that Emodar was tricked by her human master. He reminds him that she was saving up to free her siblings from slavery. The reason for the party's break was for her to visit them, but something went wrong. It turns out the master broke his promise and was preparing her siblings for an auction. The elf believes the human planned it all just to play with the girl's feelings. When she begged him to stop, he said he would cancel it if she paid within 5 days. The price was 10 gold coins per person, totaling 20 gold coins. Converting it to his old currency, the knight calculates the exorbitant ransom amount and figures that 20 gold coins are equivalent to roughly 2 million yen. The elf explains that the proud girl begged him to save her siblings, so the protagonist asks if he came to get the money on the leader's behalf. The blonde archer then swears on his name that he will pay back every last coin, but the knight refuses, stating he has no reason to trust him nor does he have the money. Dahlia becomes worried, reminding him that her siblings are just little children. Our hero acknowledges the manipulation, but the elf claims he's just reporting facts. The knight asks what he gets for lending the money, and the blonde archer has no answer. The elf has no way to guarantee repayment, and the protagonist becomes thoughtful. Cornered, the blonde archer clenches his fist, wondering if this is his only option. Suddenly, he calls out to the human and leans in to whisper something in his ear, and asks if the knight possesses the wind attribute among his affinities. It's explained that elemental affinity determines which element a person is best suited for, and magic used with an affinity consumes less mana and is more powerful. This affinity is determined at birth, and most people are born with only one. However, some geniuses are born with 2 or more and become great mages. With a determined look, the elf makes a proposal to our protagonist, and promises to grant him the blessing of the spirit of the wind attribute if he helps. Our hero wonders how someone can grant an attribute, and the elf gets annoyed. Desperate, Dahlia swears in the name of his forest and asks if he believes him now. With a sigh, the protagonist accepts the deal and gets up to put the plan into action. He then tells him they should go, and the elf seems somewhat relieved by his decision. The two leave the inn and start walking through the city streets in the morning. The blonde archer then asks how they are going to get so much money so quickly. Our hero reveals his plan to hunt in a high-level dungeon and sell the items. Dahlia is shocked, as the guild forbids entering dungeons dungeons above one's rank. The knight says he knows the rule, but it's the only way to get the money in time. The guild severely punishes those who break the rules with fines and quest suspensions, and any adventurer caught could even lose their license and never work again. Furthermore, the knight points out that these dungeons are far away and would take time to reach. The round trip alone could take up to 4 days, which is too long for them. He then asks how the elf planned to get the money to help his friend. The blonde archer says he was going to use his savings, and our hero asks if he has any. He then asks if Marin has any financial reserves for emergencies. The elf suggests he sells something, but our hero remembers he has nothing of value, and then opens his inventory, looking for anything he could sell. Among his belongings he finds a pair of earrings that might be his only option. The two then agree to pull what they can and meet later to sort it out. The scene shifts to late afternoon, with an orange sky and falling leaves. We see a hooded figure walking through a dark, abandoned alley in the city. The mysterious person hides behind boxes, peeking at a dimly lit shop. The owner asks what the person wants, and they approach the counter in silence. The figure says they have something to sell, and the man replies that he buys a bit of everything. With that, the protagonist places the pair of earrings he found in his inventory on the counter. The man is surprised and says he should sell something like that at a jewelry store, but suddenly the merchant recognizes the jewelry and is completely dumbfounded. He shouts that they are the fragments of the Pleiades, a rare and unobtainable item. The knight explains that an old companion gave him the earrings as a gift. In a luxurious mansion, a man prepares to meet with his prisoner and finds her trying to calm herself, mocking her attempt to resist him. The man says her bestial brain has finally understood that fighting back is useless. He reminds her that the last 3 years were a whim and asks if she enjoyed the freedom. With a hateful look, the girl says she wants to tear him to pieces. Suddenly, she hears a familiar voice calling her name and turns toward the door. The party leader is surprised to hear her friend's voice calling for her. Just then Dahlia and Marin enter the room, and the girl is relieved to see them. She asks why the elf brought the human with him, and he explains that Marin helped him. The blonde archer says he'll explain later, but right now, the money is what matters. Our hero introduces himself and says they came to pay the ransom for her siblings. The girl is shocked, thinking about how she accepted help, even though they're on the same team. The master scoffs, questioning if rank C adventurers could get that much money, but is surprised to see that the 20 gold coins are all genuine. The girl demands the man release her siblings, and he just smiles maliciously. The master claims the contract stipulated that she had to earn the money herself. The party leader is speechless at the man's audacity and the loophole in the law. Dahlia gets angry, stating that by law family money must be accepted. Cornered, the master orders his men to bring the slaves and their documents. The girl thinks that if it weren't for the elf, she would be at this man's mercy. The master's servant then returns with the adventurer's 2 younger siblings. The 2 shy children enter the room, and the girl runs to hug them. She holds them tightly, asking if they're okay, and they nod silently. With tears in her eyes, the older sister apologizes for taking so long. The protagonist observes the scene and notices that the children are extremely thin. Angered, the knight clenches his fist, furious that they let the children starve. The servant then hands the slaves' original identification documents to the master. The man says he's getting rid of them, and that the deal between them is concluded. The girl then uses her magic to incinerate the papers and free her siblings, and with a fiery glint in her eyes, she forever burns the documents of servitude. The master says her siblings may be free, but she remains his slave. With a dark smile, he threatens the group, and our hero steps in front of the girl. The protagonist declares they will also buy the party leader's freedom. Everyone is shocked by the knight's action and his unexpected proposal. The girl protests, saying she doesn't need his help and can take care of herself, but our hero ignores her and asks the master for the price of her freedom. The man laughs and apologizes, saying that unfortunately, she is not for sale. He explains that she is already listed in today's auction and that he cannot cancel. The knight then resigns the deal, and the master says he can still buy her. The man suggests they participate in the auction and bid for the girl. The party leader is confused, saying no one mentioned she would be auctioned. Dahlia yells at the master, accusing him of blatantly lying to their faces. With a wry smile, the man claims that selling slaves is his right. The elf is furious and calls him a scoundrel, but the protagonist calms him down. He tells the blonde archer that he's being childish and needs to use his head more. Our hero explains that the auction is just a lie to torment the girl, and then declares they will buy her at the auction, which surprises the woman. The knight asks her to wait, assuring her that he has a plan. He turns to the master and says that every child needs a guardian. He remembers a woman who lovingly cared for children in an orphanage, and then remembers a man placing a hand on a child's head. The protagonist then approaches her and says this applies to her as well. He remembers the nun saying that every child deserves protection and has a reason to live. Our hero says she is the only one who can keep the children safe and must look after them. He reminds her that saving her siblings is not the end of the story, and she cannot leave them. With tears in her eyes, the girl agrees, saying she'll give his plan a chance, and warns him that if he's all talk and ends up losing, she'll never forgive him. Dahlia tells her to trust the plan and that they'll see her at the auction later. After they leave, the master turns to the girl with a grim expression. He scoffs at her, asking if she really thinks those two can free her. The party leader glares at the man with hatred, holding her siblings tightly. The master then grabs her by the neck, saying he has no intention of selling her. With a malicious grin, he says she can't escape and will come crawling back to him. But the girl just returns his gaze with a defiant and hopeful look. The man then orders his servants to prepare the merchant's support team. That night, the auction begins, with the mansion's lights shining in the darkness. The first item is a criminal slave with a starting bid of 4 gold coins. The protagonist and the elf watch the auction silently, waiting for the right moment. Dahlia mentions that the average price for a beastman is 8 to 9 gold coins. Our hero remains deep in thought as the slave auction continues. The auctioneer then announces the next item, a wolf woman from the distant frontier, and with a spotlight on the stage, the gladiator slave Emotar is presented to the crowd. On stage, the young woman reflects that her former master must have used some trick. She clenches her fists, knowing she needs to warn her friends but is powerless to do so. The auctioneer then announces that she is young and tougher than any human. At this, the master smiles with satisfaction as he watches his slave finally be auctioned. He scoffs, thinking the adventurers have already spent their money and can't help her, and with a wicked smile, he calls them brats and doubts they can afford her. Suddenly, a man in the audience turns and says he won't let them win. The auctioneer then announces the starting bid of 6 gold coins and 30 silver. That same man from before raises his paddle, making the first offer of the auction. Our hero is annoyed because the guy was faster and made a bid before him. In that instant, another guy bellows a bid of 20 gold coins, shocking the entire hall. The girl is stunned by the amount, thinking they could never afford that much, and with that, she despairs as the auctioneer asks if there are any bids higher than 20. Dahlia panics because the average price was much lower, and the bidding escalated too quickly. The protagonist then raises his paddle and offers 21 gold coins. The auctioneer questions the bid limit, and the man explains the bidding rules. At that moment, the knight raises his paddle again and offers 50 gold coins. The elf is shocked, asking how he has so much money when he said he only had 10. The former master is dumbfounded by the offer, unable to believe they had that much cash. The auctioneer is also stunned, as 50 gold coins is the maximum possible bid. People in the audience murmur, doubting he can actually pay such a high price. With that, the auctioneer declares that house policy requires immediate and full payment. The elf then despairs and asks where the knight is going in the middle of the auction. The protagonist walks onto the stage, and the auctioneer begs him to stop. With a golden light, our hero approaches the girl kneeling on the platform. The party leader is surprised to see gold coins raining down from the sky around her. The knight then uses his ability, pouring a mountain of gold onto the stage, and with a serious look, asks if that payment is enough for her. The former master is in disbelief, unable to understand how a rank C adventurer has so much gold. A huge pile of gold coins forms on the stage, leaving the young woman speechless. The auctioneer then shouts that the slave has been sold, and the girl is in a state of shock. Later that night, the siblings are reunited in a room at the inn. The two children run to hug their older sister, who is eagerly waiting for them. With tears in her eyes, the girl says she's so happy they're finally safe. The elf asks why the knight didn't mention he had so much money saved up. Dahlia smiles, saying he's glad everything worked out in the end. The protagonist then turns to leave, but the party leader calls him back. Visibly embarrassed, the young woman thanks him for saving her and her siblings' lives. The party leader states that he rescued her family, and she doesn't know how she can ever repay this favor. Suddenly, one of the children smells meat, and our hero invites them to eat. The girl asks the elf how they can possibly repay the knight's help, and he replies that the hero only helped him because he considers him his teammate. At that moment, the leader notices an oily smell coming from the protagonist and finds it strange. The blonde archer understands immediately, and with a panicked expression, tells the knight to stop. He runs to stop his friend, but unfortunately, it's already too late for that. Our hero turns around, confused, holding a plate of food in his hand. One of the young woman's siblings then takes a piece of the fried chicken the knight prepared. The children love the taste, saying it's the best thing they've ever eaten in their lives. Dahlia shouts, demanding to know what he's feeding the children. The leader says fried chicken is fine since they have iron, rich stomachs, and explains they can eat pretty much anything as long as it's not poison. But then she asks what kind of chicken it is, and our hero finally answers. He tells her it's harpy meat, and the girl is terrified by what she gave her siblings. She tries to make them spit it out, but they insist it's too tasty to stop. With no other option, the older sister takes a piece and prepares to try it. The young woman is amazed by how delicious it is and wonders if she's dreaming. With an undecided look, she prepares to eat another piece of the monster meat. She thinks that if she passes out, the kids will get scared and stop eating the delicacy. Disgusted, the leader says she'd rather be defeated than eat such a repulsive monster, but she closes her eyes anyway and takes a big bite of the harpy chicken. Upon tasting the food, she is completely shocked by the incredible flavor she experiences. Dahlia asks what's wrong as she begins begins to tremble uncontrollably. He worries, asking if she's been poisoned like the protagonist was the other time, but the girl shouts that the flavor is incredible, and her siblings ask for more. She says she has never tasted meat so tender and juicy in her entire life. The knight smiles and says it's good, and she nods, embarrassed. The party leader insists it's not good and that she'll never forget this humiliation. Our hero then turns to the elf and reminds him of the debt he still owes, and demands 90% of his earnings until the 70 gold coins are paid off. The blonde archer loses his cool, calling him a heartless scoundrel for demanding so much. With the deal sealed, Dahlia gives his friend the reward he had promised him. That night, the two go to a forest, and the knight asks for the reason. The elf explains that it's difficult to perform the ritual in the city, which is why they came here. He then asks the protagonist to take off his gloves so the blessing can work. Our hero complies, removing his thick gloves to receive the spirit's power. It is explained that elves are born with the blessing of a spirit that defines their affinity. This spirit stays with them for their entire life and can grant its blessing to another person. But although it's their spirit, the blessing can only be given once in a lifetime. Dahlia says the knight is his savior and has already fulfilled his wish twice. With that, the elf summons the spirit of the wind to grant its blessing to the hero. Suddenly, a gust of wind surrounds the protagonist, and he feels its power. He can't see it but feels the power of the spirit flowing into his hand. Dahlia explains that humans have stolen these blessings before, using pain as bait. The knight listens in silence to the sad story of his friend's people. The elf says they have long memories, which is why so many still suffer from the trauma. With a green aura, the protagonist feels the power of the blessing in his hands. The blonde archer states that he despises the humans who cause so much suffering, and with a glow in his eyes, he transfers the spirit's blessing to the knight. Our hero then receives the power of the wind and a burst of energy that hits him. His status screen updates, showing that he has acquired an affinity for wind. Dahlia clarifies that he still hates humans and that the blessing changes nothing between them. He says that just because he gave the blessing doesn't mean he has forgiven humanity. The next day, the group gathers at the guild to begin their new journey. The leader waves excitedly, saying the knight has finally arrived for the mission. She explains they found a non-human babysitter to look after her siblings. The girl celebrates her first day as a free citizen and is incredibly excited. With a smile, she shows them the new quest she accepted for the Crystal Cave. The elf is surprised as the quest is located in a muddy and dangerous swamp. The protagonist reads about the monster and wonders if the mud tastes good. Seeing his friend's reaction, the blonde archer wonders if he intends to eat mud. The elf asks if she checked for other monsters, and the leader explains on the way. She mentions that after the quest, she needs to find a place for her and her siblings to live. Arriving at the rental point, the group comes across a luxury vehicle and is intrigued. The girl says this isn't the one she ordered and that she can't afford to buy it. Suddenly, a figure in skeletal armor appears and greets them. A familiar voice emerges from the carriage, and the young woman's former master reveals himself. The party leader recognizes the voice and is shocked to see her old master there. The man steps out smiling, saying he didn't mean to arrive so late. The knight asks what he wants, and the man replies that he missed her. With a malicious look, he says he's there to make them a proposal, and then suggests they trade the slave back, which surprises the hero. The knight turns to face him and begins to tremble with rage at the absurd proposal. The elf freaks out, saying the matter is already settled and the deal was finalized. The former master scoffs, telling the young woman not to give him such a dirty look. He warns them that his guards are above level 60, and they can't stop them. The protagonist then steps forward and addresses the man by his full name. The master offers 100 gold coins to have the slave back, but our hero refuses. The man is shocked by the refusal and doesn't understand what's happening. The elf is furious with the master's audacity, calling him a full-mouthed villain. At this, the master offers 150 coins, but the knight refuses again. Imitar steps in front, shouting that the hero wouldn't sell her for 100 million gold. The man scoffs and raises the offer to 200 coins. Confident he will succeed. Dahlia becomes desperate at the offer and tells the knight not to even consider it. Suddenly, the man with the paperwork states that Marin was just messing with him, and then clarifies that the documents were destroyed, making the girl a free person. Our hero warns that if he disrespects her again, things will not end well. Full of hatred, the master calls them pathetic for acting so bravely. He then says he thought he could solve it with money, but won't give up on her. At that moment, the elf pulls her back, declaring he'll have to take her by force. But suddenly, the master is hit by a powerful punch to the face and stumbles backward. Imotar says she couldn't stand listening to him anymore and had to put an end to it. Radiating a red aura, the girl shouts that she is no longer a slave and demands respect. One of the skeletal knights prepares to attack the young woman for her insolence, but the protagonist stops him, warning him not to draw his sword recklessly. In a swift move, our hero throws the skeletal knight to the ground with force. The other guard gets angry and readies his bow to attack our hero. The protagonist then bends down and picks up a small rock from the ground to defend himself, and then throws the rock, with such force that it cuts through the air like a blade. The guard is hit squarely and spits something out before collapsing. Defeated, the master then demands to know his level, and Marin reveals it's 95. The young woman is shocked to learn the protagonist is level 95, and so is the elf. With a wry smile, the girl grabs the master, saying they're not done yet. Suddenly, a cry of pain echoes through the street as the man's beating continues. The elf then warns her that they'll be late for the carriage and need to leave. With a smile, the young woman says she's finished her work and the man is unconscious, and stretches with satisfaction, telling him to never show his face around here again. The master, lying on the ground, threatens that they will regret this when he informs the guild. With a dark aura, the knight says the rumors about him already make it hard to find a party, and then warns that crushing a merchant guild is easier than finding a team. With that, the protagonist delivers a powerful kick, destroying something with great force. The man's carriage explodes into 1,000 pieces, leaving him stunned by the destruction. Our hero then warns him to know his place and that this was a small warning. The scene then shifts to the crystal cave, where purple crystals glow everywhere. Inside, the elf shouts that the monsters are weak to fire and asks for a torch. The girl then gets an idea and Dahlia panics, begging her to stop, but it's too late as a motor unleashes a massive fireball that incinerates everything. The elf complains that she needs to practice, but the girl laughs, saying she didn't have time. Later, the protagonist prepares a meal that looks disgusting and strange. His friends ask if he's really going to eat that, and the elf comments that it looks nasty. The knight brings the spoon to his helmet and notices the food has no smell, and then concludes the taste must be different from dirt and tries the food. The taste is horrible, and he considers the texture the worst of all, like clay with chewing gum. At that moment, the knight decides to eat the rest of the fried harpy chicken he saved. Suddenly, the girl calls out to him, thanking him for saving her family from slavery. Our hero says she doesn't need to pay the debt since she has siblings to feed. She asks how he got so much money and if he got involved in something dangerous, but our protagonist denies it, saying it was nothing like what she imagines. He reveals that he sold a memento from an old companion, which shocks the young woman. She worries because even if she pays him back, he can never get the item back. With a determined look, the woman faces the knight, who tells her it's okay. Our hero explains that they are his companions, and the way to repay him is to stay with the group. The elf agrees, adding that it's good to have her as a leader, which makes her blush. Unmatar says she'll do her best and then asks about the blessing the elf gave him. Dahlia explains it wasn't a gift but payment for a contract between them. The girl asks why he would give the blessing to a human whose face he's never seen. She then approaches from behind him and tries to peek under the hero's helmet. The woman asks if he has a scar, but the elf scolds her for being nosy. The blonde archer says his friend hides too much and should try to open up more. Our protagonist remains silent, seemingly pondering his friend's advice. Suddenly, a glint appears on his helmet as if he's about to do something. Out of nowhere, a monster attacks, hitting the protagonist with its sharp, purple crystals. His companions are shocked and frozen, unable to react to the attack. The beast is a lizard with a crystal tail that glows in the cave's darkness, but the creature is hit in the eye and screeches in pain from the direct impact. The girl then leaps onto the monster to finish it off once and for all. After defeating the beast, she turns concerned and asks if Marin is okay. The elf is also shocked and asks the knight to lift his head so they can see. The hero brings his hands to his face and Dahlia shouts that there are crystal shards in his friend's eye. With his hand on his helmet, the protagonist realizes he's been hit and feels the sting. He says his vision is fine, but the blonde archer yells that he's bleeding a lot. Just then, the girl orders him to take off his helmet so they can see the wound. She says if his eye is injured, they need to return to the temple immediately. Suddenly, the protagonist remembers two adventures screaming in fear of a monster. In his memory, he sees one of his old companions running through a forest. Back in the present, the knight yells for no one to touch him, leaving his friends confused. The elf then asks if he really refuses to show them his face no matter what. With his hands on his helmet, the protagonist replies yes, looking disturbed. He then starts to panic, begging them to stop and not look at his face. His friends insist they need to examine the wound before treating it, but our hero claims he's fine and his vision is perfectly normal. The protagonist points out that they know his level and a level 30 monster wouldn't injure him, and then assures them he's fine and they can continue the quest. His companions stare at him with serious expressions, not looking convinced. The elf gives in, telling him not to overdo it, and the girl apologizes for trying to take off his helmet. The knight then also apologizes for yelling at them like that. Back at the guild, the quest is marked as complete, and the team receives their payment. The receptionist asks if something happened, and the nervous young woman denies it. She approaches him and asks if he's sure he doesn't need to visit the temple. At this, the elf suggests they take the day off to rest. Suddenly, an adventurer bursts into the guild, shouting that there's an emergency. He runs up to a girl and asks what's causing all the commotion. The woman reveals that a new dungeon has appeared in the forest region near the capital, and shouts that the place is called the Dryad's Flower Garden, and our hero becomes thoughtful. His friends think it's better to let other teams handle it and go back to the inn, but the protagonist announces that they will also participate in the subjugation, shocking everyone. He then reveals he has something else in mind, something much more important at the moment. The scene then shifts to a lush green forest under a blue sky on a sunny day. Several teams are gathered to receive instructions from the guild about the new mission. Two adventurers mention that the first person to find the dungeon was defeated and it has two bosses. Hearing they are dryads, the knight starts thinking about how to cook the monsters. The girl warns him that if he eats in front of everyone, the party's reputation will be ruined. And he then says that since elves are vegetarians, he'll prepare a special dish for Dahlia. One of the mission organizers confirms that the rumor about two bosses is true. Suddenly, a knight in golden armor declares there's nothing to worry about, and introduces himself as Anchorman, the first hero, ensuring the operation's safety. The elf then gets annoyed, asking how Marin doesn't know what a hero is nowadays. He explains it's the title given to those who fight against the Demon King and his minions. However, some people fear the appearance of heroes due to their immense power, and their presence can be seen as a bad omen, heralding the resurrection of the Demon King. Because of this, they receive special treatment and are generally well regarded by everyone. The protagonist uses his appraisal and notices the hero has several completion titles. Dahlia reveals he's seen a hero before, but of the 5 found, only 3 remain. The second was eliminated, and the 4th was defeated by a monster in a dark forest. Our protagonist remains silent, seeming to remember something important. Suddenly, a swarm of giant bees flies toward the adventurers to attack them. The elf gets ready, and with his bow and arrow, he takes precise aim at the flying creatures. With a clean shot, he hits the monsters with his verdant energy arrows. The girl also joins the fray, taking down one of the bees with a powerful punch. The knight springs into action, felling the enemies with a swift slash of his sword. 2 onlookers comment that the messy team is quite strong and skilled. The girl laughs upon realizing the group's name is spreading, and the elf tells her to focus. The plan is for the hero in the rank B team to handle the bosses while the others provide support. Suddenly, one of the Dryad bosses, level 58, appears before them. The rank B team seems to be struggling, and one member complains they're making a fool of themselves. The hero then enters the fight to contain the monster, asking them to keep it busy. With his gleaming sword, the blonde young man prepares to deliver the final blow, and with a powerful strike, he cuts the monster in half, defeating the first boss. The other adventurers are impressed by the hero's power and congratulate him. With a confident smile, the young man boasts about his strength and his recent victory, but suddenly the other Dryad boss lets out a furious roar at its partner's defeat. The adventurers wonder why the creature is making so much noise but pay it no mind. The creature then transforms into a much darker and more powerful form than before. The monster attacks without warning, grabbing one of the female adventurers who screams for help. The protagonist realizes there's a trick, and the dungeon has multiple bosses to face. He then understands that both bosses must be defeated at the same time to win. The creature evolves into Tyron, its level rising to 70, instilling fear in everyone. His elf companion asks what they're seeing, and our hero shouts for them to fall back. At this, the hero is also surprised, stating the monster is beyond his capabilities, and decides to buy them time, urging the other adventurers to flee, but the beast vines trap the others, and the blonde warrior calls them a nuisance. It's revealed that he bought information from the Thieves Guild about the dungeon, and he admits to lying, blaming the others for blindly trusting him without checking. Without caring about their fate, he walks toward the monstrosity with a smile, and the young man prepares for battle, declaring it's time to end this like a hero, but without warning, the monster casts a curse, preventing him from using his skills. Stunned, he wonders what's happening, as he hadn't heard of a cursing ability. With that, the creature flings him into the air with immense force, giving him no chance to defend, and then the monster smashes him into the ground with a devastatingly powerful blow. Trapped in the vines, the blonde man struggles to free himself, thinking he just needs to cut them. Seizing the opportunity, the beast charges to attack the immobilized hero, and he's hit head-on, screaming as his eyes go white from the force of the impact. Witnessing the hero's defeat, the other adventurers panic and retreat. Our protagonist realizes that if this continues, many more will fall, and watches the creature chasing the others, preparing to join the fight. As his sword begins to glow, the knight wonders how much he should hold back. Our hero faces the colossal creature, questioning if he should hold back a bit, and charging forward with a swift and precise strike, he cuts the monster with his gleaming blade. This attack is so powerful that a wave of blue energy obliterates the surroundings. Countless trees are sliced in half and fall with a crash, demonstrating the blow's strength. After the dust settles, a notification screen materializes before our hero. The message announces that he has acquired the title, Conqueror of the Dryad's Garden. His friends run up to him in shock as the knight ponders the new title. The girl congratulates him on the feat, but the elf mutters that he was just showing off. Our protagonist feels awkward at the reaction, not knowing what to say to his friend. The other adventurers approach, thanking him for saving everyone's lives, and say he's amazing for defeating a boss that not even the hero could handle. But an instant later, they start whispering about the rumors that he devours monsters. Hearing the conversation, his companions glare at the group with pure rage. The girl becomes furious at their ingratitude, and the elf shouts if it's human nature to repay kindness with malice. She tells them to get lost, and Dahlia asks her to bring some salt to ward off bad luck. Meanwhile, one of the adventurers approaches to help the fallen hero. The blonde warrior is furious, unable to understand how a rank C stole his title. Filled with hatred, the hero vows he will never forget the name Glace for this. Back in the city, the group checks into an inn for a well-deserved rest. Inside, our protagonist begins to prepare the dried flour he collected. He starts by carefully slicing the flour, taking care not to damage the core, and with a knife, he skillfully extracts the monster's core to cook it. These kernels are the size of a fist and resemble a variety of chestnut. On the way back, they found an ant and collected the chestnuts it was carrying. To prepare them, he removes the hard outer shells and then boils them in water. The peeled chestnuts cook over a low flame in a pot of boiling water. Meanwhile, the protagonist mixes water and sugar in another pot to make the syrup, and then brings the mixture to a rolling boil, letting it reduce until it forms a syrup. Once the chestnuts are tender, he adds them to the syrup, coating them. Using a spoon, our hero drizzles more syrup over the top, ensuring they are covered, and after they're coated, he covers the pot, letting the sweet treat rest. He lets the chestnuts cool and repeats the process 3 times to get the flavor, and with a divine glow, our hero's Aunt Marin Glaxeye is finally complete. The knight admires the shiny sugar glaze, satisfied with the final result. Without hesitation, he lifts one of the giant chestnuts to his helmet to taste it, and upon trying it, he is completely dumbfounded by the explosion of flavor in his mouth. The syrup provides a deep sweetness that the tender chestnut has fully absorbed. He immediately thinks that something so delicious shouldn't be eaten alone and decides to share. The elf grumbles but agrees to try a little since his friend insisted. With a reluctant expression, Dahlia takes a big bite of the chestnut, and upon tasting the treat, he is completely surprised by the burst of flavor. He can't believe that a monster's fruit could be so sweet and tender. Our hero asks if it's good, but an embarrassed Dahlia claims he's not used to it. He asks for the dish's name, and the knight replies that it's called Marin Glash. Dahlia finds it strange that he named the sweet after himself, but Marin clarifies otherwise. The elf explains that his master taught him to suppress his appetite by limiting sweet treats. He mentions that she was a very strict person and still serves as captain of the guard. Instantly, the protagonist grabs his wrist, uttering his master's name, Rose. He then describes her perfectly, a pink-haired elf with a spear and a water attribute. The elf is dumbfounded by this revelation and demands to know how the knight knows this. Instead of answering, our hero asks if they can travel to his forest tomorrow. The scene shifts to the vast Asura forest on the central continent, home to colossal trees. Our hero travels through the forest, seemingly in search of someone he met long ago, and remembers that Dahlia's master was the best friend of a mage from his old party. He recalls a quest with an elf who wielded a spear, an unusual sight. The knight finds it incredible that the same elf is his new companion's master, and wonders if she would still remember him after so much time. Suddenly, he spots a pink-haired elf and is shocked to recognize her. The woman turns to him, spear in hand, and faces him with a serious look. She notes his appearance, and the knight asks if she was looking for him in the forest. In a commanding tone, the elf orders the human to state his name immediately. The protagonist introduces himself as Marin but quickly corrects himself, saying no. He then reveals that his real name is Charlotte and greets his old acquaintance. A smile appears on the elf's face as if she remembers her old friend's name, and she chuckles, saying it's been a long time since anyone called her by that name. Rose asks how he's been, and the knight feels a wave of relief that she remembers, but in an instant, she lunges at him with her spear, demanding to know who he is. She accuses him of impersonating an old friend to trick her in the forest. The elf explains that Charlotte was human, and it's been 100 years since their last meeting. With a firm gaze, she says that if he's really Charlotte, he needs to say what she used to call him. Our hero pauses for a moment, searching his memory for the nickname. In a flashback, a young redhead calls the knight Mr. Charlotte. The young man offers to be the party's shield bearer, noting that someone skilled is rare. But our hero flatly refuses the offer, though the young man continues to insist. The blonde young man persists, and the knight gives him a stern look. Just then, the elf joins the conversation, suggesting he get to know other races. At that moment, the blonde young man invites him to meet his best friend, a forest elf, and then introduces the knight to his friend Rose as Mr. Charlotte. The elf seems annoyed by the human's obsession with her species, finding it unbelievable. Back in the present, the knight prepares to answer his friend's challenge. In a memory, the knight and the elf are shaking hands and introducing themselves. She finds the name Charlotte long and pompous, deciding she'll give him another name. Returning to the present, our protagonist reveals that she called him Char, and the elf is shocked. She wonders if he's really Charlotte, as the voice and build are identical, but he hasn't aged. The knight adds that he was about 15 when they met a long time ago. He even remembers she had a mage friend who hated her sweets, and that he received letters. A bit embarrassed, he asks her to stop him, feeling he's proven enough. The elf watches him with a serious expression, seemingly convinced by his story. She thinks his innocent tone is the same, and that it's really Char, but she doesn't understand how. With that, Rose is finally convinced that he is her old friend, returned after a century, and then tells him to follow her, explaining there's something important she needs to check. Later, inside the elf's cabin, the reflection of our hero's helmet shines in a glass. She apologizes for having nothing to serve, but he assures her it doesn't matter. The knight asks if she lives alone, and Rose explains it simplifies her duty. He comments that she hasn't aged a day, and she asks why he wears the helmet. Our protagonist replies that he has his reasons, offering no further explanation. At this, the elf asks to see his hand, hoping to understand what's happening. As she holds it, she realizes he hasn't aged either, and that time has stopped for him. He then asks if their friend Carlos is also alive and young like him. With a sad look, the elf reveals that not only Carlos but everyone else is gone. The knight understands, noting that after a century, all the humans would have passed away. The elf admits she assumed all her old friends were already gone. She explains that after becoming an adventurer, her only contact with Carlos was through letters. But then the replies stopped, and she didn't hear from him for 20 years. Next, his party Romancha disappeared without a trace. Rose says that while the disappearance of mercenaries wasn't unheard of, it was bombshell news. She couldn't accept it and held out hope for news, but a long time passed. For that reason, she is more surprised than happy, and asks how he lived without aging. Our protagonist says her name, preparing to tell his friend the whole truth. He reminds her of the rare item she acquired the last time they partied together. It was the skill book on arachnophobia they got from the Spider Queen. Rose remembers he was the party's only appraiser and identified the item for her. Placing a hand on his chest, the knight states that object is the reason he is alive, and with a grim expression, he reveals that it's why his companions disappeared. The scene flashes back 100 years to a lush forest under a sunset. The protagonist's old party faces a horde of goblins with red eyes. The knight defends himself with his shield as the monsters charge to attack. His companions are startled by the creatures, wondering what they are. The party leader orders Charlotte to hold the front line while the others attack. Our protagonist plants his shield firmly, protecting everyone from the goblin onslaught. The party's archer readies a glowing arrow, prepared for a wide area attack, and then a rain of light descends upon the monsters, eliminating several at once. The leader calls for Carlos, and the mage confirms he's ready to cast his fire spell. A massive wall of flames incinerates the goblins, who scream from the intense attack. After the dust settles, the monsters' bodies are on the ground, and the knight feels something is wrong. The archer complains that their client lied, as the area is filled with strange monsters. One of them suggests retreating, but the leader insists the information was wrong. With a grim look, another companion agrees the situation is serious. Suddenly, a hooded figure appears, complaining they destroyed her creations. The archer shudders, and the knight steps in front to protect her from the figure. The leader notices something strange about her and tells everyone to be prepared. She identifies herself as an adventurer and declares the forest forbidden to outsiders. The figure claims they annoy her, and the group is horrified to realize they were test subjects. Wielding a sharp claw, the person alleges they interrupted her sacred ritual, and upon pulling back her hood, a creature covered in lizard-like scales is revealed. The knight questions the creature's race, sensing something is wrong, and uses his appraisal, horrified to discover the creature is of the dragon race. Without hesitation, our protagonist throws himself in front of his friends to protect them. The scene returns to the present with the knight and Rose in her forest cabin. He is lost in his memories and suddenly utters the name of his fallen friend. Back in the fight, the knight is thrown against a tree by the creature's blow. He falls to the ground, injured, while his companions shout his name in concern. The dragon scoffs, declaring it will use them as offerings for its sacred ritual. The leader orders everyone to prepare for battle, and tells Damian to heal Charlotte. With a wry smile, the creature says that even insects deserve to know who crushes them, and then introduces itself as the Golden Dragon, the pinnacle of draconic intellect. The mage is terrified, and the leader warns everyone to stay vigilant as she is powerful. Carlos realizes they need to escape and decides to use a spell to blind her, but in an instant, a claw pierces through his chest, and the mage collapses gone. The archer screams her friend's name as the dragon mocks the human for using magic. Enraged, the young woman fires an arrow at the beast to avenge her friend, but the dragon dodges and counterattacks with a fatal blow, taking her down instantly. The party leader is in shock, unable to see or or hear the creature's attack. She finally understands how powerful a dragon can be and the danger they face. With wide, terrified eyes, the leader despairs, not knowing what to do. She glances at her fallen comrades, realizing they can barely stand. The leader thinks Demian's healing could save them, but he would need time. With that, the party's priests decide to draw the dragon's attention to create an opening. The leader turns to the creature, asking what a dragon is doing in a place like this. With a malevolent look, the dragon reveals its one desire, the resurrection of the Demon King. She explains that as a golden dragon, she received a revelation about the world's future. To purify the world, the plague known as humanity must be eradicated. But one being realized this before her, the Demon King, who dedicated his life to this cause. The dragon confesses she fell in love with the powerful man, and that she will be his queen. With glowing eyes, she proclaims herself the golden dragon who fell for the Demon King, and then reintroduces herself as the Med Dragon Savior. Preparing an attack, the priest thinks she's unhinged, but her speech gave them the time they needed. He is about to cast the area heal, planning to grab everyone and escape, but without warning, the dragon appears and attacks him with its claw, piercing his chest. The leader screams his name as the creature scoffs for thinking it wouldn't notice the ruse. Furious, the warrior charges with her sword, aiming to strike the dragon and avenge her friend. Using one of its claws, the creature conjures a purple energy blade to defend itself, and in a single swift move, it defeats the leader, who falls to the ground, unable to fight. The dragon laughs, saying they fall like insects, and threatens to use them as test subjects. Our protagonist knows they can't win and everyone will be eliminated if he doesn't do something, but then remembers the skill book, thinking of using it to create a chance. A red glint appears in his eyes as the knight activates arachnophobia. A message notifies him that the negative effect, assimilation, is being activated, but an instant later, the message changes, informing him the effect has been successfully dispelled. At that moment, our protagonist wonders what happened and why he didn't turn into a monster. The hero is horrified to see a severed arm on the ground, confused by what happened. He questions what he's seeing and why the daytime sky has turned into a full moon night. Suddenly, he spots a skull hanging from a giant spider's leg and backs away. With eyes wide with terror, the young man whips his head around in pure panic, and then realizes the terrible truth: he is transformed into a half-human, half-spider monster. The protagonist wakes up in the middle of the dark forest, confused by the scene of destruction around him. He then looks at his own image on a status screen and is completely shocked by his appearance. In that instant, a system message appears saying he has acquired the title, Kinslayer. Our hero panics, wondering if he was the one who eliminated all those innocent people. Fallen on the ground, he spots the saint's glowing hand, an accessory that removes status abnormalities, and then wonders if that accessory was what cured him and brought him back to his senses. The knight remembers that the side effect of his arachnophobia skill was assimilation. With this, he understands that he lost his mind and only woke up because the accessory cancelled the effect. But for now, Marin Glace is simply relieved to be awake and have his senses back. He then looks at one of the bodies and sees it was the hero who was defeated in the forest. The protagonist is terrified to realize he took the life of all of humanity's hope. He wonders about his companions, as the last thing he remembers was fighting the dragon. With a focused gaze, our hero tries to piece everything together to understand what happened. On the ground, he sees his mage friend's staff, broken, and understands the worst has indeed occurred. The knight finally faces his reflection and realizes he has turned into a terrible monster. Back in the present, the knight says that when he finally regained consciousness, 100 years had passed. He laments having taken his friends' lives and that for a century, he couldn't tell anyone about it. Moved by his pain, the elf places a hand on his shoulder, saying it must have been very difficult. She consoles him, saying no one would blame him as he risked his own life to save everyone. Our hero apologizes for the heavy topic, but Rose says she now understands why he survived. He then remembers she asked about his helmet and begins to explain the reason to the elf. In his vague memories, everyone who saw his face called him a monster and ran away in fear. That's why, after waking up, he deactivated the skill and thought about going to a temple to be purified. But the protagonist was too afraid to show his face without first checking his own appearance. Rose then asks if he told this story to Dahlia, and the knight replies that he hasn't. Marin Glace fears that his relationship with his friends will end the moment they see his face. The elf then advises that instead of looking in the mirror, he should show himself to his friends first. She explains that his fear is not his face, but others' reaction to it. With trembling hands, the protagonist admits he still doesn't fully trust his companions. At this, Rose places her hand over his and asks if they really aren't his friends. With that, she tells him that one day he will have to trust his friends, just as they trust him now. Our hero remains silent, pondering his friend's words, and replies that he will try. The elf smiles, pleased with his answer, saying it's good that he's willing to try. The knight then changes the subject, asking why Dahlia calls him Maham sometimes. He reveals that it's the name of the dessert he prepared, and the elf is shocked to see the jar. The scene then flashes back to where one of the merchants merchants asked for the protagonist's name. Not having a name in mind at the time, he introduces himself as Glace. He explains to Rose that he changed his name for fear of being on a wanted list. The elf then asks what he's been up to, and he tells her about his new friends and how Dahlia has improved. Rose smiles, saying he smiles more now, and that even elves change with time. Before leaving, the two shake hands, and he promises it won't be so long before he returns. She says goodbye, and the knight waves back as he walks away through the forest. Rose thinks that his friends must already trust him more than anyone else, and knows that the rest now depends only on the protagonist and his future decisions. Glace wonders if one day he will have the courage to show his face to his new friends. Walking through the forest, the knight reflects on change and wonders if he can change too. Back at the inn under the night sky, the city lights shine brightly. Suddenly, Amadar lets out a cry of anger, saying that the darn hero is so annoying. The knight and the elf enter the room and the girl greets him, saying he's back. Our hero brought roasted chestnuts, and Dahlia asks if they're the same ones he made before. The knight asks what happened, and the girl begins to recount her day at the guild. She explains that the hero took all the quests she wanted and accused her of breaking the rules. With a dark aura, the young woman says she shoved the proof in his face to prove her innocence. But the hero just laughed and pretended it was a small mistake, playing innocent. Furious, the girl says she already feels like beating him up just for being human, but he's even worse. The elf then adds that he's been following them and picking fights on purpose. With a serious look, the young woman says the hero seems to be looking down on the knight. Our hero then realizes they aren't the only ones bothered by the hero's behavior, and the protagonist is surprised to learn a hero is causing trouble for people. Suddenly, the young woman's siblings appear, and the knight turns to look at them in silence. One of the children grabs the chestnuts, and a motor yells for Glace to stop them as they've run off with the food. But the children love the treat, and the beast girl tries it too, finding the taste delicious and very sweet. She then tries to make them spit it out, but they insist it's too tasty and want to eat more of the delicacy. Dahlia sighs, saying the hero won't be around forever and that weirdos always become heroes. Our hero then asks about the story of the hero who passed away, and Dahlia confirms it was the fourth hero. But the protagonist corrects him with a clenched fist, saying he's referring to the second hero who was eliminated. He then suggests that the current hero might have eliminated the second one, as he seems quite capable of it. The elf, however, dismisses the idea, saying Ankorman is childish but not bold enough for such an act. And Dahlia remembers his childish revenge, saying you can tell just by looking at his actions. The knight asks who eliminated him, and Dahlia explains the official story was a mistake in the dungeon. With a hesitant expression, the blonde archer says that's not the official story, but that there's a rumor. He then leans in and starts telling the rumor to the protagonist, who listens very attentively. With a very serious look, the elf reveals the identity of the true culprit behind the second hero's demise. We then see the body of the second hero lying on the floor in a luxurious, dark hall, and the one responsible for his fall was none other than the third hero, who watched from the shadows. The scene shows the hooded third hero again, observing his victim's body on the floor. Our hero is shocked by the revelation, but Dahlia says it was just a rumor, and there was no proof. But he explains that on the day the second hero passed away, a massive thunderbolt struck the capital. The strange thing was that it was a clear, cloudless day, which led to the conclusion it was artificial. And the third hero was known as a master of lightning magic, which made him a suspect. In contrast to his power, however, he had the worst personality of all, and because of this, people kept their distance from him, and he was the only hero who wasn't loved. The elf explains that the official version was a confrontation with assassins, but most believed the rumor. Annoyed, the girl says she's never seen a decent hero, and if she sees Ankorman again, she'll pull his hair out. Our protagonist then changes the subject, noting the hero had many first completion titles. The elf explains that a condition for the hero title is possessing a first completion title. The beast girl then concludes that he's unhappy with a new candidate and wants to monopolize the titles. The knight deduces that the hero is provoking him because he thinks he stole the Dryad Dungeon title. Glace wonders why he has a problem with more candidates, as that should be a good thing. The children then look at the jar of chestnuts, and one of them takes one to eat. Annoyed, Amadar yells at her siblings, telling them to stop messing around immediately. Our hero then falls silent, clasping his hands and thinking about what Rose told him. He remembers his friend's words, saying that one day he would learn to trust his companions. Seeing the scene of the family reunited, the knight understands that there are no secrets forever. The protagonist knows the day to reveal the truth will come, but he still fears what will happen, and then wonders if his friends would accept him even if his face is that of a monster. With his gaze lost in the starry night, Glace admits he doesn't know the answer to his question. The scene then cuts to a dark, damp dungeon where the team begins a new mission. Suddenly, a level 39 mutant slime attacks Amadar by surprise. The elf is startled as he thought it was a common monster, but it was actually a dangerous mutant. Our hero then uses his new ability to enchant his sword with the power of fire, and with his flaming blade he quickly advances to attack the slime monster. His friends notice the slime is different and wonder if it's a sign of the Demon King's return. The protagonist fears that if this is true, true, they might encounter that dragon again, and then worries because his new friends are weaker, and he fears failing to protect them. Suddenly, Dahlia shouts for the knight to dodge, and he throws himself in front of his friend to protect him. Our hero then takes a direct hit to the helmet but manages to shield his companion from the attack. With the monster distracted, the elf shouts for Imodar to attack with everything she's got. The beast girl then warns everyone to get back and prepares her fire magic, and unleashes a massive fireball that incinerates the mutant slime in a large explosion. After the battle, the party leader asks if everyone is okay and realizes she was hit by a piece of goo. Dahlia then scolds the protagonist for getting distracted and asks if he was thinking about eating slimes again. The knight is shocked to see the elf was injured in the arm to protect him from the attack. Our hero is surprised to see his friend hurt, but Dahlia says it's nothing serious. With a clenched fist, the knight blames himself for his friend's injury and asks why he did that. The elf is confused by the question, and the girl begins to heal his wound with her magic. The protagonist says there's no way to get hurt in a low-level dungeon, and that his role is to protect everyone. He asks why the archer risked himself, but the elf just says it was a gut feeling, and explains that even though he's human, he's his companion, and he couldn't let him get hurt. Our hero remains silent, processing his friend's words and what just happened. Back in the forest, the beast girl notices the knight has been acting strange since meeting her master. The protagonist apologizes for what happened, and the young woman asks what happened between him and Rose. She tries to get closer to ask, but the knight pulls away and continues walking in silence. Suddenly, the elf hears a strange noise and warns that there are monsters nearby in the forest. At that moment, a knight is hit by a surprise attack and cries out in pain from the impact. A dark and powerful monster appears, and the other knights prepare for battle. One of them is worried about the creature's strength and wonders where the reinforcements are. The dark beast then charges with its sharp claws, ready to attack the knights. One of the men is knocked down and shouts for help as the creature closes in for the final blow. And with a quick strike, the creature eliminates him and turns to the others, who are terrified. Suddenly, the creature's mouth opens, revealing a row of sharp, glowing teeth. The remaining knights are shocked by the monster's appearance and don't know what to do. But suddenly, the elf catches the creature's attention and lures it into a trap. With the monster distracted, leaps from a tree to deliver a powerful blow. With a yellow glow in her hand, she attacks the shadow creature with all her might, but the monster grabs her with its dark tentacles and throws her to the ground with force. Suddenly, a blade cuts through the tentacles, and the knight appears to save the beast girl. Our hero then delivers a powerful blow that defeats the shadow creature in one go. The surviving knights thank the group for their help, saying they saved their lives, but our protagonist just nods and turns to leave without a word. Suddenly, a dwarf appears and thanks the group, saying they were worried about the soldiers. The beast girl says it's rare for the knight to help humans and asks why he always helps them. One of the knights then warns them not to leave, as the forest is still dangerous. His friends are shocked to see the distinguished and important person they met in the forest. The protagonist is confused by the reaction and asks who the person they just met is. Annoyed by his ignorance, Dahlia scolds him, saying the person is none other than royalty. The young dwarf smiles and says it's natural not to know each other as they live in different places, and then introduces herself as the daughter of the Dwarven Kingdom and the Golden Master. The scene then cuts to a tall, imposing tower under the starry night sky of the city. The elf is shocked to learn it was a dwarf, and our hero asks who Gnome is. The elf asks if he knew from the start that she wasn't human, and the dwarf confirms he did. With an arrogant look, Dahlia says he would never save a human in the first place. Our hero then realizes that's why they went into the forest without hesitation, and the knight is disappointed, as he hoped his friend's hatred for humans had lessened. He then asks where the party leader is, and the elf explains she went to the guild. Dahlia says the guild can't interfere in the matter, and that she must be having a rough day. Suddenly, the elf freaks out at the knight for calling her a child and scolds him for his ignorance. The dwarf laughs and says she doesn't mind, and the elf continues to defend the princess's honor. The protagonist then adds that she is a married woman and already has children, which shocks everyone. The dwarf thanks the group again, saying they prevented a major incident in the forest. Our hero just nods, not knowing what to say about the whole situation. Just then, the guild receptionist and the princess return from the meeting with the authorities. The princess then asks the kind children who saved her to tell her their names, and with a smile, the young woman says she will never forget the names of her benefactors. She then prepares to leave, saying her carriage is waiting outside, and says goodbye, saying something small and red would suit them, and the elf is confused. Back at the guild, the receptionist explains the princess was a special case and there's still much to verify. The elf then decides they should wait for Immatar, and our hero nods in agreement. As time passes, Dahlia grows impatient, and the knight wonders if there was a problem. Suddenly, the elf's stomach grows, and he realizes they haven't had any dinner yet. The protagonist then gets up and prepares to serve the meal he had prepared, and with a divine glow a bowl of fresh, green salad appears before the blonde archer. The elf is surprised, as it's the first time he's seen his friend eat only vegetables, and he offers some, but Dahlia refuses, saying that even if they're vegetables, he must have made them with monsters. The elf is in a dilemma as the salad looks delicious, but he doesn't trust the cook, and with a reluctant expression, he asks for some of the salad, since it's not monsters this time. The protagonist then serves him some, and the elf takes a piece with his fork to try it. He closes his eyes and takes a bite of the salad expecting the worst, but is surprised by the taste. Suddenly, the elf's eyes widen with the explosion of flavor he feels in his mouth, and declares the salad is delicious, and it's the first time he's eaten something so good since leaving the forest. The elf then asks what the soft thing in the salad is, and the knight hesitates to answer, but finally reveals that the soft, delicious thing he ate was actually slime. The blonde archer is horrified by the revelation and panics about the slime he ate. The protagonist explains he was out of ingredients and tried to make something similar to konjac. He says he made a salad as it was the easiest choice and most of the vegetables were normal, and the knight then reveals he dried and crushed the bodies of Pinyu monsters to use as seasoning. The elf then collapses at the revelation, and the knight says the seasoning is quite spicy. Furious, Dahlia grabs him and shouts for making him eat monsters again and asks what pinyas were. The knight reminds him he said it was delicious, but the elf says he didn't know about the monsters. Our hero tries to argue, but the blonde archer shouts that it's not about being vegetarian or carnivorous. Suddenly, the party leader appears and says they're full of energy in the middle of the night. The elf tells his friend he was saved by her, and the girl explains she was tired of the paperwork. With a proud smile, the leader announces that as of today, she has been promoted to rank B. Her friends are shocked by the news and don't understand how she got the promotion. The group then meets with the guild master, who observes them with a serious expression. The guild's vice master introduces himself and asks if they are the group that saved the princess. He addresses Imutar, and she nervously confirms her identity to the guild master. With that, he hands her the promotion certificate to rank B and congratulates her on the achievement. The beast girl is radiant upon receiving the certificate and celebrates her promotion with a cry of joy. With the certificate in hand, she celebrates, saying she's one step closer to reaching rank A. The elf then congratulates her, and the girl jokes that by the time he catches up, she'll already be rank A. But the guild master interrupts them, asking if they know the party ranking criteria. He explains that the party's rank is set by the lowest ranking member, so they are still rank C. With that, the beast girl realizes they need to hurry up and become a rank B party as soon as possible. The protagonist then addresses the guild master and asks if he has information about a dragon. With a grim look, he asks if he knows anything about the golden dragon that attacked Adorama. The guild master is silent for a moment before answering the knight's question, and says the story is from before he was born, but he knows the situation as he's heard of it many times. The scene then shows a city in flames, with people screaming in pain and despair everywhere. His friends stare at him in silence, waiting to hear what the guild master has to say. The guild master says that Director Daisy knows more, as she is the longest-serving employee there. With that, the elf offers to guide them, and our protagonist thanks her for her kindness. Meanwhile, the vice master stays in his office, smoking and reading some important documents, and then mutters the name Marin Glace, looking quite thoughtful about the night. The man wonders how such a strong fellow suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the city, and seeing that he's looking for the golden dragon, the master decides he needs to keep an eye on him. The director asks how he knows about the dragon and reveals she was the one who organized the case files. Our hero then asks where the creature has been since the attack in Adorama. The elf thinks for a moment and asks if he wants to know if the dragon was defeated or not, and then reveals that the dragon was subjugated by adventurers during that terrible time. The knight is completely shocked by the news, unable to believe what he just heard,